Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Long Meadow Select Board meeting for March 18th, 2019. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tonight we have a really full agenda. We're going to be reviewing the Capital Planning Committee's recommendations. We're going to be discussing the middle school statements of interest with our superintendent and school committee members, and we've got some action on some liquor licenses, both one-day liquor licenses and a seasonal renewal of liquor licenses. We're also going to be reviewing some of the priorities that we've been working on. So we do have a large agenda, so we're going to get to it very shortly. I just have two quick announcements, and I'll ask anybody else if they have them. The first one is, as part of our ongoing budget and warrant article review, which we didn't get through, we're going to have a special meeting of the Select Board this Thursday night. That's March 21st. It's begin at 6:30 p.m. here in this room, primarily for the Select Board members, but anybody else, obviously it's an open meeting, is welcome to join us. We're going to finalize and approve the budget, finalize and approve a warrant for the Springtown meeting. Additionally, there's a Department of Public Utilities is holding a hearing on, I believe it's Wednesday, March 27th, in the Long Meadow High School auditorium. It's with regard to the Kinder Morgan step-down, proposed step-down pressure station on Hazardville Road or at the Long Meadow Country Club. It's a public meeting. It's been called by the Department of Public Utilities, but I didn't want our citizens to know that it is open to the citizens of Long Meadow. Again, that's Wednesday, March 27th. That's the day after our special town meeting, which is Tuesday, March 26th. So Wednesday, March 27th is the DPU hearing on the Kinder Morgan step down. Does anybody else have any other announcements to pass along?
What time is that?
I believe that's at 7 o'clock.
That's what I thought.
I believe it's at 7 o'clock, Bill.
I have it on my calendar.
Let me know if I'm wrong, Tom.
No, 7 o'clock is the Kinder Morgan.
Kinder Morgan. It is 7, okay. So with that, I'm going to ask to see if there are any residents' comments of people who are present tonight. Seeing none, I'll just ask if there are any select board member comments. We do have one that was pre-planned, so Marie, go ahead.
Okay. There's a special town meeting on next Tuesday, March 26th. A petition was brought forward, and after sitting down with the head of the building committee, Mary Beth Bergeron, with the petitioner, with the manager of the gift shop, and the lead petitioner, as well as one of the volunteers at the shop, we came to a preliminary agreement and some ideas going forward, negotiated some ideas, and so I put together a letter that everyone who was at that table heard. There were just two clarifications I made on it, simplified it with information I received later, and so I want to just read the letter. The town of Long Meadow is holding a special town meeting on March 26th after a citizen filed a petition asking that the new adult center be built according to the preliminary plan presented at annual town meeting in May 2018. There have been some design changes due to increased cost of materials and needed changes in the preliminary plans to accommodate the programs and services. The petition's asking that we pull back the bid and stop the project. The request is that we go back to the preliminary design with the added design cost and the projected increase in the cost of the building next construction season. The town will need to go back to town meeting for added funding of $1 to $1.5 million. Another June ballot vote may also be required. I would like to clarify the status of the design and correct some misinformation that's motivated this petition. Long Meadow is planning on keeping the gift shop at the current location. The Maple Street gift shop at Greenwood sells donated items and greeting cards. The Friends Group for the Council on Aging runs the gift shop to support programming at the Senior Center. The preliminary design of the new adult center included 275 square feet for a gift shop. This is an inadequate space. The gift shop is now in a space of 990 square feet and can expand at the current location. The petition would require the gift shop to move to a smaller space. Another problem with going back to the original design of 275 square feet for the gift shop at the new center surfaced in our December town audit report. The town auditors informed the Select Board that municipalities cannot use town resources to fundraise for private entities no matter what the cause. To comply with this ruling, the town will have to charge rent for the gift shop. The cost of the lease would be higher at the new center, and the small space would not allow for much profit for a swap shop. Also, space at the new adult center could also be attractive to other entities during the bid process, and Long Meadow could end up with a business at the new adult center, not the Friends gift shop. I'm committed to working with the town and the Friends group to find a workable solution at the current space. Another issue for the petition was the pickleball courts. The pickleball courts are part of the bid that has gone out. There is concern the gym is slightly smaller. The square footage of the gym is actually larger with the inclusion of the elevated track. The elevated track is one of the most popular design features of the new center. Moving from preliminary design to final design is a complicated and fluid process. The building committee has been meeting almost weekly to have building bid ready for this year. The meetings are posted and open to the public. Comments are invited at the beginning of the meeting. With this information and the agreement to work together for a positive solution on the gift shop, the petitioner has decided not to go forward at this time. There's still to be a meeting on March 26. The town moderator will advise town meeting on the best way to proceed with the article under the new circumstances. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm hoping in the future that we have some informational center sessions available down at the senior center. Also, one of the things discussed is if we could look into possibly any rent that's received from that space currently could be put in the revolving fund at the COA. In order to put it in the revolving fund, I guess that might require a warrant article, so maybe we could discuss that before we close the warrant that's coming up. But there will be, I'm going to say it again, there will be a town meeting on the 26th. My understanding is that they will not be going forward with the petition, and we're waiting for the town moderator, who currently is not available to speak to tell us the way she prefers to handle the current change of circumstances.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any other comments? Okay. Hearing none, we're going to move right into our agenda. We're going to start with the town manager's report. So, Stephen.
Mark, I don't know if since we have other guests, I could defer. Most of my town manager's report is related to the agenda items. Or we could just jump in. It's up to you.
Okay. Yeah, okay. If we want to, we can get back to it. So if
Yeah.
you want to, that's fine. Okay, we are going to go through the agenda the way it is, though, just to get approval of the minutes. March 5th, 2019 special meeting. That was the one where we appointed members to fill the vacancies on the school committee. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes, March 5th.
Motion made by Mr. Lacusa and seconded by Mr. Foster. Are there any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? The vote is 5-0. Thank you. The other thing, though, Stephen, I did want to go through is a quick review of the progress on our priorities, and just so people here at home understand, we had listed 5 items that we wanted to track, 5 projects we wanted to track. One was the filing of Article 97 for Bliss Park, which is certifying it, if you will, or designating them as Bliss and Laurel Parks as parks. Our streetlight audit and purchase program, library operations agreement, and the Kinder Morgan project, and the Adult Center and DPW. So if there's anything of highlight there, Stephen, please go forward. And I will say that there were some things in our packet, so you'll probably have something to say.
Yes, so I did put it in the heading of my town manager's report just to consolidate all the information and kind of summarize it for the board's benefit. The first is the library operating agreement. I did talk to Rose Crowley, the town council who was working on this issue with us, and she recommended maybe having a discussion in executive session with the board to talk about talk about her analysis. I did ask if she was available on the 1st and she is, so we could, Mark, if you would like, we could schedule an executive session for the April 1st meeting.
Do that, yeah. Okay.
So for Bliss Article 97, we did get the town generated a certified copy of the vote from that town meeting where the citizens petition voted to put, basically do a confirmation that is Article 97. Kathy Ingram, our clerk, generated that certified petition, I think. That was sent to town council and it was recorded. You have a copy of the recorded document in the packet as well. On the metering station, as you noted, there is going to be a hearing on the 27th by the Energy Facility Siting Board at the high school. That is intended to provide an opportunity for residents, and I'm quoting from the notice, provide an opportunity for residents, public officials, and other interested persons to provide comments regarding their concerns related to the 261 upgrade projects and the Long Meadow metering station. Our plan is to, I know I think the fire chief and maybe the deputy chief plan to attend. I plan to attend as well and just kind of listen to the feedback that is presented and just take in information. That may generate some questions for the siting board that we may have, and you have until April 10th to submit the questions. Yes.
Yeah, do we have any, is this like this Dover Amendment thing, or do we have any authority at this thing, Stephen? Is there?
Since there's not really a filing, official, like a formal filing to respond to, it is more of a listening session. I've been going through this information. We hired an attorney who's consulting with us on this, and it depends on a variety of factors. I mean, there are parts of it that if it's regulated by, if it's permitted by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, the federal government, then we don't really have a lot of say in that. But if it's the Energy Facility Siting Board, which is a part of this Commonwealth Department of Public Utilities, that kind of gives us a little more connection to the process. But different aspects are permitted by different entities, and this has been the challenging thing. So until we have the formal set of plans that we can review and send to council, I can't tell you specifically what role we have, because it is going to depend on the plans. I think there's, the biggest thing, Richard, that makes us, I don't think there's anything like the Dover Amendment that's like a strict exemption, but minimally, we have an ongoing relationship with both Tennessee Gas and Kinder Morgan, and Columbia Gas. We have a long-standing multi-layered relationship with them, and we will continue to have a multi-layered relationship with them. So we do have means to communicate with them and give them questions directly. We can submit comments through the siting board saying, here are our concerns, here are things we'd like to see. But in terms of like local permitting and things like that, it's not clear.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I just wonder if it's something that we're going to just blow hard and blow hard and blow hard, and then at the end of the day, we have no authority. That's what I was after. Really, comments are positive, there's no doubt about it, but do we have authority to actually stop that thing?
Yeah, the way it looks now, I don't know. I think it depends, but probably not.
Okay.
And I know you've hired the consultant, and you'll be talking to her about any comments we should be making at this point. And the other thing that's sort of rolling pretty fast towards town meeting is that bylaw. And I know the bylaw can make a difference. We're not sure if this project, but future projects. Is she going to be able to help us with that and review that bylaw?
She has reviewed it. I did discuss it with her. Again, it's a little complicated. And I asked her to give me something in writing in terms of what our approach should be for the bylaw. And as soon as I have that, I think I'm going to get that from her tomorrow.
Okay,
and I'll
great.
submit that to the board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So once again, we plan to go, and then our intention would be to submit any comments or questions we have before the April 10th deadline. If something comes up at the hearing, or the board members want to have a question submitted, you can submit it on your own directly to the deciding board. If you want to put them together, kind of as a town, official town set of questions, let me know. I think myself and the fire chief will be coordinating that. And again, I think, and I did note this in here, but I do want to reiterate, we do have open dialogue with all the stakeholders, Tennessee Gas, Columbia Gas, the Pipeline Awareness Group, Long Meadow Country Club. So I don't want to make it think like we're in the dark on it and it's going to happen and we're going to be caught unawares. We've had excellent communications because we have those existing partnerships, and we're obviously going to do everything we can to protect the town's interests.
I have one other question.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the fire chief. By the sheer occupation that he has and the training that he attends, I feel comfortable he knows a lot more on the subject matter than I will ever know.
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to get a briefing on this? I mean, even any type of additional information to educate us along with this process too?
I believe so, Richard. Again, I think we've heard a lot about what they're planning. There wasn't a lot of detail regarding the metering station project specifically in that EIR that we looked at.
All right.
That was really mostly the stuff across the river. The 261 upgrades is what that refers to. Most of that work is in Agawam. As we get closer to receiving something official, stamped plans, we will be able to respond to those, and I'm sure the chief will be able to brief the board on what those look like and any concerns he may have.
I'm sure the chief will do this, but I think it's important for him to be able to be involved with the design process so that he can better protect the area. I mean, orientation, access to the facility, things like that.
He will tell you he's not an engineer, but he will look at what they produce, and then he will certainly, and we will certainly comment on the design. But in terms of like designing going in and working with the designer before the plans are produced, I don't see that happening.
Because I think that would be important for him to be able to have a seat at the table and might save on design.
We do, as I noted, we do have a seat at the table. We will review and comment on the designs like we do for all projects.
Hey, can I have
Go ahead.
literally just one? We keep hearing about the release of these flumes of toxic chemicals that are released when this thing aspirates or whatever it does. And I'd like somebody has to have some data to support how far this goes from that point. I mean, that has to be in the technical review data. I can't imagine anybody would ever say we're going to put this thing right in the middle of Longmeadow, knowing that in 50 years from now, we're going to be sued for $4 billion by each occupant because they were 1 foot too close to this flume. I guess that's the stuff I'm after.
Yeah. I would think, these are not just built as they go along. I mean, they must have to meet federal standards for any kind of facility.
Well, I know, but
like
that's
this.
usually our first mistake.
So,
He's working for
Knowing the
feds.
federal government.
so I think, this is the part of this that gets tricky because there's a lot of information being circulated out there, and I'm not a scientist. There are standards that go along with these things in terms of air quality. I believe they have built-in air quality monitoring and alarms and things like that. And so there are certain regulatory thresholds that apply to these projects that they have to meet, and that's one of the part of the things that the siting board reviews. Are those thresholds correct? I have no idea, but I do know scientists and researchers have spent a long time developing those thresholds, just like any regulated industry has certain thresholds, like you name it. I mean, there isn't an area of life that government doesn't touch. And so, and the other thing is, it's not clear that this type of facility does emit a lot of fumes, to use your word. So there's been a lot of conflation of what the project they're talking about here is and what other facilities are, and they're different. They're very different. And what I'm trying to do is just make sure people understand that it's Apple. This isn't a compression station. A compression station does certain things and functions in certain ways and may have certain emissions or off-gassing or whatever. A metering station maybe is different than that. But I don't lack the technical, or I don't have the technical proficiency to speak to the parts per million's difference or whatever. But and that's why I think once they have a plan, we can look at those benchmarks. And the fire chief does have access to software and things like that. That does model certain scenarios, and of course he is going to do that, and has been kind of doing his own research. But like I said, we're just in a research mode, and until we have something formal to respond to, we're reserving comment.
I think another step that as a town we can look at, again, the bylaws do control, and we could have some standard operating procedure requirements. I think Mark had spoken about that before, and what testing and safety measures. Maybe if there is a release of gas, the town must be informed of ahead of time. If it's a controlled, if it's accidental, we have to be told within so many hours. So I think we could start putting together those type of requirements and make it a requirement of performing, and then that would be more information that our Board of Health as well as our emergency management will be able to have a handout on.
I think we'll look at what options we have in terms of if something like that's already regulated, then a bylaw probably won't pass muster with the Attorney General. I think that's the thing where it gets pretty gradient in what we can do locally and what we can't do, and these are the things that I'm working with the attorney to sort out.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The consultant will help us.
All right, thank you. Stephen, any update on streetlights?
Well, I was going to go in order here.
Okay.
The new adult center. We have done the pre-qualification of subcontractors. Mary Beth was generously a part of that. Having been through that once, I know that was a task I want to delegate, because you get a photocopy paper box full of proposals they have to go through and fill out detailed evaluation forms. Thank you very much. I was all set with that. We did have a robust process, and if past this prologue, the DPW had a similarly robust pre-qualification process, and we ended up getting a good bidding climate, and I hope that that's what this means for the adult center. We've done some due diligence on the site. There is some asbestos-containing material in the little brick outbuilding there, and then and once again, the tennis courts there have some asbestos-containing material, so we're working on a mitigation plan for that. There are still a number of variables in the design. I mean, we talked about this before. The building really was only a feasibility study when it was presented to the annual town meeting, as you go through design process, walls move, systems change, things happen, not only to get more efficiency out of the design and get a better layout, but also to reduce cost. We've had a few cost estimates. We're still over budget. According to we have two independent cost estimators. They have a reconciliation meeting. Is it this week?
Next Monday.
Oh, it's next, yeah. So they have a reconciliation meeting where they'll go through and say, I had, this amount per square foot over here, and try and true it up. I think it's of concern that the estimates are still over budget, but I do think that they are being fairly conservative. So I don't want to, in order to strike an optimistic tone about the project, the Hadley Senior Center came back favorably, and that was bid, I think, a couple of months ago. So we continue to work on it, and they will be, I just found out they'll be presenting informally to the planning board in April, so they'll be in pre-permitting process as well.
When's the expectation of a bid package going out?
May?
I think they're setting out to bid first week of April.
First week of April?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so they're close. On DPW, the removal of the ACM soils is complete. That, I think I said at the last meeting, that went as well as it could possibly go. They were working today on the temporary cap that the board approved Thursday night, and that should take about 2 weeks. And I expect that if the weather stays favorable, they will be out on site by April 1st, starting to actually do the work of the project, and the building will actually start to materialize. We did lose 7 months, which is very unfortunate, but we just have to keep pushing forward and hope that we get good weather this summer, and the project, we can gain some ground on the schedule.
Yeah, but 7-month delay, but there was work going on.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was a 7-month. The building project itself was a 7-month delay,
Right.
but the delay was basically used to address unforeseen circumstance.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I did request today an extension from DEP for the permanent capping of the landfill. Actually, it's an extension for the design. We have to create a final design for the capping that's based on the current grades and shapes of the top of the landfill, which is changing as we bring in the soils for the temporary cap. So once that's all done, there has to be inspections, and then they shoot the grades, and then they come up with the design. So that will be delayed for about 6 weeks. As I said, DEP has every expectation that the town will install the permanent cap this construction season, so sometime before, late fall.
And the tennis court from Greenwood, will, if there's any substances there that need to be put down, will we have time to do that?
That is going to go to a different site.
Oh, it does?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Just a different material, different location. It was kind of the capping that we're doing was really more contouring. And so they want, it was really for finer grade soils versus chunks of asphalt. And quite honestly, because the DEP says so.
Okay, is there any asbestos in the tennis courts at Greenwood?
Yeah.
There is?
Yeah, but it's not a large amount of material compared to what we just went through. And so sending that off-site is not like it was for the DPW. And like I said, we checked with DEP and they didn't want it to go there.
Oh, okay.
Plus, knowing about it, you don't just grind it all up.
Yeah. It'll go someplace else. Maybe Ohio, maybe someplace hopefully closer, but you can't go there. And then finally on the streetlights, so we did we started our agreement with Real Term. There was, I guess I will diplomatically call it a miscommunication, but it was really a lack of communication that I thought the audit was being done, and I think I'd reported that to the board. It turns out it was not being done. So it is being done now. It will be completed by the end of the month. Then we will, we have a phase 2 for that agreement, although it needs a separate notice to proceed. We will then, if we like the results of the audit, we will then go into design of the system and continue working with Agawam and West Springfield, kind of jointly there, kind of now, they're kind of in the same place we are now. They're proceeded with their audits with Real Term. I think I reported that we were going to be eligible for incentives from Massachusetts, the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission, as well as the utility companies that will offset our costs. I think there's some information in the report about projected savings, and based on debt service. I do think that we'll be able to reduce the overall cost by virtue of, there'll be rebates back, but the ultimate borrowing will be reduced by the rebates and the incentives we get from the utility and MAPC. But there's a warrant article there's an article in the town meeting warrant for funds. I'm confident that by the time we have to make the motion for that warrant article, we will have a good number to make the motion with. Unfortunately, I'd love to have it now, but I think this is somewhat common in some of our warrant articles when things are evolving. It'll be, as you see from the data, it'll be close to what we have in there on the $800,000 range, but we will have advanced, I think the audit will be done, we'll have advanced the design, and we'll have a much clearer sense of what our specific cost is going to be.
I've been watching this process since I got on the board, and I know that Richard, Marie, and Mark have really done a lot, plus probably board members prior to my being on here. We've had a few discussions of it, but, when I look at the kind of numbers in terms of the savings to the town when we buy our own streetlights, it's really impressive, and I appreciate all your work, Stephen, but all the work that board members have done. And, the town, hopefully when we bring it to a warrant, you'll realize what a savings this has been, but you may not realize what a battle it's been. But it has been for a long time, and I'm glad to see it's finally closing.
Well, I think we're going to make a great pitch. I appreciate the comments, Tom. We're going to make a great pitch to town meeting. I think it does present an excellent value proposition. From an environmental standpoint, it's the right thing to do. You're right that it's been an arduous, to say the least, process, because it started even before my time. But even since I've been here, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but if we were National Grid customers, it probably would have been done by now. I think, like I said, the biggest barrier was there wasn't a tariff, which meaning the amount that they charge us for our streetlights, like the monthly charge, they didn't have one for LEDs. So even if we had bought them and converted, 4 years ago, we'd still be paying the same amount of money. less the rental charges. So they finally, I think, in 2017 maybe, they finally adopted the LED tariff.
It was last year even.
Yeah, I think it was later than that. So that really, so we had walked away from it because we weren't going to save any money. And then they did this, and then kind of things shifted around. And like I said, and in that time, the cost of LED fixtures has gone down and the quality's gone up. So
Great.
the timing is much better now than it was before.
I had one question,
Whatever.
and I know this is still coming together. I see the $43,000 estimated ongoing maintenance. I would assume that's bulb changing maintenance, and
Yeah, for the most part. And that's basically MAPC collects data on
Right.
maintenance costs and has, like, if you have this many streetlights of this type. So they looked at our data and gave us that as their estimated cost of maintenance.
when the final wrap-up comes, I don't know, I didn't read the specs on what's being done. Is it going to have an age of the poles and replacement frequencies and the whole ball of wax laid out so we can look at the 30, 40-year purchase price of this system? Not just the glory, but the actual guts that comes behind it?
I don't know if that's a planned part of the report, but we can certainly ask.
Because, we don't know how old the poles are, we don't know, there's a lot of joint ownership, we don't know the legalities between the different utilities and who's going to be responsible.
Richard, my understanding is that part of the audit, we're going to find out whose pole it is, but I think I was led to believe that very few of the poles are Eversource poles. Most of them are Verizon poles. They'll stay Verizon poles. And so the cost of doing this will include the cost of having our lights on Verizon poles. But if a car hits the pole, it's Verizon's going to replace the pole.
Okay, well, I'd just like to make sure,
Right,
Mark. when-
right.
because
And
that's a
the
very
audit's
important-
supposed to
Right.
tell us
Right.
whose poles are what.
Because there's like beyond the creation of life, the only thing that's more complex is utility companies. On how they have tariffs and back and forth, and who owns that pole, and who pays for this pole.
The only entity that legally has 3 sets of books, right?
Yeah, it's
Well, and this, I think...
smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, the one benefit of this is that it gets us out of that world. And the other thing is, no matter what the long, amortized life cycle cost of this stuff is, if you look out 30 years of the cost replacement poles fixtures, and then you look at the savings...
Show me the facts
Right.
before you give me the
And the other
statement.
thing that isn't quantifiable at this time that I'm kind of excited about is owning, I think it's 600 or 700 poles that we would get as a part of the deal. That gives us the opportunity then to install things on those poles, 5G network nodes, smart technology for,
Right.
Cameras, things like that. So it's a real opportunity as well.
Right.
Marie?
During the audit, I'm not sure if they can drill down to that, but already Eversource is leasing space to Verizon for some of their wireless connections. So when we buy those poles, we should be able to assume those leases. How many of them are there out there, and how much money will that bring to us?
Should be able to.
Yes, we
As
should
if
be
as if
able
there's
to.
not lease agreements that they have, that, hopefully so. I don't know that I would use the word should. I would say hope to.
Well, all I know is once we own it, they're either going to have to remove their material. I don't think that they can continue to collect on a pole they don't own.
I haven't seen the lease agreements between Verizon and Eversource, so I can't say.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think if we have that as, like I said, if we have that as an opportunity, it'd be great. It'd be gravy.
So maybe when they're out counting, they can see which ones have Verizon material.
Who's going to present this? Who's going to present the findings?
Real term. Real term's got...
They're going to come in before here?
Yeah,
Okay,
well-
good. We'll have the questions ready then.
Okay, good.
The knives sharpened.
That's it. Anything else, Stephen?
That's all I have on the priority lists.
I just have one, it's not even a question, it's more a comment. Going back when you said we have a working relationship with all the entities that involved in our metering station, and because this isn't really the metering station, I held off because it's not Kinder Morgan, it's theirs. But my understanding is there's a step down there, part of it's Kinder Morgan, there's going to be a Columbia Gas. If people remember back in October, we had the director of marketing from Columbia Gas here, and at the time, we were talking about holding off on work here, and he said he'd get to us with a report of an incident January of 2018. That didn't happen, and so based on the conversation we had here about a month ago, I wrote him a letter saying we're still waiting for your report. I've heard back from him like you've heard back from him. So, you know, if you've got a good working relationship, maybe you want to call up Columbia Gas and let them know they owe the select board a response to our inquiry and our follow-up letter. You know,
It's an excellent point.
Pretty bad practice on their case, because I plan on bringing up the next meeting, reinstituting a freeze to get their attention. And we got to get their attention. We asked them for a report on a overpressurization in the town of Long Meadow and got nothing.
I don't know that that's the way to do it, but they did, I was informed that they are aware that they owe the
I've
answer.
asked them, I'm going to give you an opportunity to ask them. but
They know they owe you the report. I can tell you that. They know they owe, and they plan to
All you got to do is let us know what the status is, okay.
Yep.
Anybody else have any comments, questions for the town manager on those priority items? Thank you, Stephen. I think at least we're making progress on a few of those, and the rest we'll go forward with. The one
Well,
purpose of,
I mean, one's done.
one's done.
One is done, right?
We're working on the others, yep.
No progress and completion.
The reason that our agenda said discussion and possible action is that, or possible vote is, one of the earlier discussions we had was a lot of these were, in the time it was the filing of the parks as Article 97, it was the library discussion, we were waiting on our town attorneys, and so the question was, do we get a second set of attorneys? Only because our town attorneys have delegated or dedicated or assigned an individual to the town, and if we want 2 or 3 things to be done at once, we might need 2 or 3 attorneys, and I just want to know if people on the board here are satisfied with the speed that these things are happening. I will say, Stephen, when we got our packet last week and I saw this filing from on the parks issue, I sent it to that committee, the Save Our Parks Committee, just telling them we're done. Mm-hmm. And we've completed the requirement of that article of the town meeting. They were very, very appreciative that it was completed. You know, a couple of comments about, gee, it took an awful long time, but the fact is it's done, so we did get that done. I just want to know if anybody feels that we ought to try to get more resources on some of these things to move along.
What, do we have a history of backups? I mean, I think that would be what it is. If we do, then I think we answer our own question. Yeah, we need backups if we're having problems with time turnarounds.
Rick?
I always hate to bring on more attorneys, because I think our legal fees are really shocking as it is. But my opinion is, we've hired a firm, and if our town attorney is really busy, he really should be bringing someone else in, which I think he did mention someone else was going to come in and help him.
No, that's a replacement, that's not an
That's a
addition.
replacement, okay.
Well,
So let's give, if she's now taking over the contract, let's see how she does before we add more people. Yeah.
Can I get us on the same page of what's actually happening with town council before we go further down? Town council has, since Dave Martell left, Doherty Wallace has taken a team-based approach to town issues. By and large, first it was Mike Callan, now Judge Callan is no longer with the firm, and then it went to Mike Schneider to be the kind of point of contact, as we refer to town council, it'd be him. He also does other private business, a lot of private transaction business for the firm, and so the firm has also had some transitions of their own. People, someone passed away, they've had some retirements, things like that. So they met with us and presented that they are going to keep the team-based approach, which is kind of reorient the starting lineup, if you will. And I think it's going to flow a little more smoothly. I think Mike had, and the other thing is we have thrown an inordinate amount of work at them in this fiscal year than we normally do. I mean, they've been deeply involved in the special town meeting processes, and those are things that were not generated by us. So I would just suggest that we traditionally haven't had an issue with backups. They're normally very responsive, and we get a lot of benefit and efficiency from their institutional memory. I think if this new structure shows signs of being slow or unresponsive, then I think we'd be the first ones to recommend making a change. But I just say, let's give them let's give it a little more time, because they've gone through a transition at the firm.
And that's fine, Stephen. My only concern is that, I don't want to be here a year from now saying we're still waiting on a few of these things. Now, if it's not them we're waiting on, that's very different from, being told we're waiting on the attorneys. I just wanted everybody to hear that, at this point, I think we're beyond our content, our base price with them, and so, if we hire another attorney, it's just we're paying somebody else by the hour instead of them by the hour. So I don't know that it's cost us more money, again, if we've got a lot going on, but we'll wait. But I got to say, I was disappointed when I hear how long things have been taking. So
How often we bid the services?
well, we have to do it we don't have to bid it, but we have to assign it every 3 years. We have to review it.
It's a 3-year cycle?
It's a 3-year assignment.
It hasn't been out to bid.
It's an annual assignment.
Yeah, but it's
Annual
not to
assignment.
bid. Last time we bid was Dave Martell, right?
Yeah, I don't recall it ever really going out to bid
Yeah.
formally,
We
anyway.
talked about it about a year or two ago, about it, having it going out to bid, and we decided to stay with this for the institutional memory.
The other thing is, I think the retainer represents a pretty good value. I think we'd probably pay a lot more if we went someplace else. That's not a reason to not switch, but I just think there's, like you said, Thursday, more lawyers doesn't necessarily mean more work or more productivity.
I just said it means more bills.
Yeah, it definitely means more bills, but it doesn't necessarily increase
I
productivity.
believe our institutional knowledge retired and is now a community gardener, too.
So we can just call, you can just check
Yeah,
out with him every week.
That one is gone. He's gardening.
But he left his files behind.
Yeah, we know how that is.
All right, we'll move on from this, thank you. Then we're going to move into new business, and our first order is the middle school statement of interest. And so if I could ask, we've got representatives in the school department, school committee. You want to just come forward. In our packet are 2 statements of interest called SOIs to the Massachusetts School Building Authority, one for Glenbrook Middle School, one for Williams Middle School. I will have to say that having read through them, and I have copies of the previous years. They are quite similar with some dates changed and a few updates. But please, Dr. O'Shea or Armin Ray.
No, we appreciate the opportunity to have you consider supporting the submission of statements of interest to the Massachusetts School Building Authority. So the MSBA partners with communities to address the facility needs of schools, and as you know, it's a very competitive application process, and we have made multiple attempts to apply to the School Building Authority to address the needs of the middle schools. I think that the key reason is that we believe the needs of the middle schools exceed what can be addressed through typical custodial care, typical maintenance care, and certainly even through the capital planning process. And so, given the age of the systems, the conditions of the buildings, the educational needs of the buildings, I think a more ambitious approach is warranted. And so, the statements of interest, as Mark mentioned, are with you. We updated them based on some feedback that we got from the Permanent Building Committee. We appreciate Mary Beth Bergeron taking a couple of tours through the middle schools to kind of deepen their understanding of the needs of the buildings. So we tried to incorporate some of the feedback that we received from the Building Committee. We also made some notes to any work that has happened since the SOIs were submitted last year. So, as Mark suggested, the documents are largely similar to what you reviewed in the past. But again, we think that we're kind of at a crossroads. The buildings have largely been untouched since they were built. Williams Middle School, 1959, Glenbrook, 1967. And original systems, plumbing, electrical, heating, and so something is needed, and we think that partnering with the MSBA makes sense for us. The question I'm often asked about the statements of interest is, what's the plan? And the plan is really just to, at this stage, the plan is simply to communicate to the MSBA what the needs of the buildings are. And then from there, you let the feasibility study, if we were fortunate enough to be selected into the eligibility period, we would let a feasibility study guide us in terms of identifying what would be the most cost-effective solution, what would be the most educationally effective solution. So there's certainly dense documents. There's some very specific vote language that we would ask you to use if, in fact, you do support the submission of the SOIs. And we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Marie?
I heard that there was a program that the state had for repairs, and that we were looking into applying for that. Can you do both?
So there was, so we had the SOIs before you are for the core program, and that's for major renovation, major repair, major additions, replacements, that kind of thing. So the MSBA does have an accelerated repair program, and so the accelerated repair program exists to give districts the opportunity to replace windows and doors, roofs, and boilers. And so I think I guess the critical question is, were we to apply for the accelerated repair, would that perhaps jeopardize some of the bigger solutions that we need? And the other issue with the accelerated repair program is whether or not the age of our roofs, boilers, windows, and doors qualify for that accelerated repair program. So they have specific thresholds, which we could talk about a little bit, but they have very specific thresholds that you have to clear before you would even be considered for the accelerated repair program. So the roofs have to be 25-plus years old. This is the 25. They change the thresholds and the qualifying eligibility each year, but in 2018, to be eligible for the accelerated repair program, the roofs had to be over 25 years old. Windows and doors had to be over 30 years old, and the boilers had to be over 25 years old. So we're right on the cusp, depending on which building, which system you're talking about, we're right on the cusp of eligibility for the accelerated repair program in those categories.
Go ahead.
So the really old buildings can get repaired, and the not as old buildings can be replaced. So we're going for a replacement because we're not eligible for the repair.
Well, I wouldn't say that we're necessarily going for a replacement. I think by submitting a statement of interest into the core program, you're going for a major feasibility study to determine what the best course of action would be.
Okay.
It could be a replacement. It could be a replacement of both. It could be a single replacement. It could be a major renovation of each building. But that's where you sort of have to let the facts guide you, and the sentiment of the community as well. That's a huge consideration as well. But I guess the question would be, and once you tear into the roof or you go to replace windows, are you going to uncover greater needs, and are you going to be at a point where you really are forced to look at a major repair or renovation anyways? I think that was the community's experience with the high school. There was, if you start to tinker with one system, one component of the building, you open up the need to address more, potentially.
But in full reality, with the high school, that was an unforeseen site condition. That was asbestos. It was under, nobody knew it was there.
Right.
It's unlike 1,800 buildings, you can really get into these buildings and look. They're commercial quality. The one question I had, the accelerated repair program, have we ever used it in town?
Not to my knowledge.
We did consider it on the first time around with the high school. Before the high school condition, per the feasibility study, just wasn't a wise investment to put the money back into the school at the time.
Just so people understand, though, we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on windows in the high school, put a new roof on the high school, which I think we finally paid off. Or are we still paying on the window for the old high school? No, the roof of the old high school.
I believe it's done. I don't think there's anything outstanding on the high school, with the exception of
The new
building.
part, right?
Would it
but-
clear just last year, though?
Not in the distant past. I don't remember exactly.
Because I remember it was still pretty current.
But the windows, I was on capital planning,
Right.
and we 4 or 5 years in a row put.
And I think the thing was they'd use them in the new building, someone said. Yeah, right.
So
Let me ask you, just for clarification, this is either or then? These are not two separately standalone programs that you can utilize?
I would suspect strongly that once you get into the accelerated repair program, the MSBA wouldn't entertain an application into the core program, because they're not going to dump the millions of dollars into roofs, windows, and boilers
Right.
if you're later going to turn around and submit into the core program. So I would say, it's not written that way, but I would say in effect, that's the case.
Yeah, because I noticed this year on the, it looks like Blueberry Hill boiler replacements. I doubt very much if those boilers are 25 years old, but, and we put
Yeah.
Blueberry
we did.
Blueberry Hill, they might be.
yeah,
No.
no.
We had a call with them last summer, I think, and went through all of that, and we're really scratching for opportunities to pursue it. Maybe not necessarily for the middle schools, but for the boilers that we know we're doing.
Right.
And we struggled to find some of that. I think we found one roof that meets the threshold. And it's all based on, so they have a certain amount of money. The more applications they get, the minimum age goes up. So,
What I was wondering, if it was a dual program that you could use, say, such as like a Blueberry Hill, it's in fairly decent shape, and you need boilers, but I don't think we're going to hit the ages.
Yeah, a community could apply for the accelerated repair in one building,
Right.
but not.
Only residential do you have your boiler for the regular
Wasn't that,
light district.
we had 2 or 3 boilers of the same model boiler, and they all kind of,
yeah, if you
last
Google
one.
Burnham V11,
yeah.
So right now, the Williams roof, I think, would be eligible. The Glenbrook roof, I don't think would be, based on the age.
Armin, I have a question for you, and it has to do really with the philosophy of this. I read this as and I think Dr. O'Shea confirmed this, that we're throwing out 2 SOIs because we haven't really made the internal decision of, the permutations are, replace one and fix the other, replace the other and fix one, combine them into one. And so we throw out the SOI and said, let's do a feasibility study. But I guess my question is, from the school committee's point of view, what do you anticipate being in a feasibility study that'll move us that extra step to make that decision? I mean, and I guess that's a nice way of saying, shouldn't we make the tough decision up front and go forward to the MSBA and say, look, as a community, we've decided that here's what we need to do. And can you help us financially do that?
Yeah, I think, I'm speaking for myself, since a newly reconstituted board meets first time tomorrow night, but, having gone through the process before, it is a long process, lots of steps in between to keep us and the public informed. And I think what the feasibility gets is we're talking about more than roofs and boilers and windows here. At Glenbrook, we're talking about student safety. If you're on the second floor of Glenbrook, there's only one entrance on either side, in or out, in the whole building. So from a safety perspective, there aren't multiple points of egress for the children to get out. There's a classroom that's right off the vestibule as you enter the building as well. So there are safety concerns with the physical layout of Glenbrook Middle School.
But that wasn't the question that was asked.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll let you finish. I mean,
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. Foster.
He was asking something totally different than you were answering, though.
Okay,
So what I'm saying is, should the community, and by that I'm saying the school committee, I guess, because you represent the community, make that tough choice of, here's where we want to be, instead of saying, MSBA, will you come in and tell us what we can do and what you'll support us, is here's what we as a community want to do. We think it's best to, tear down and rebuild Blueberry Hill as a single Williams Middle School as a single large school, eventually move out of Glenbrook, we think that's best. Or we think it's better to renovate Glenbrook and rebuild, Williams, or whatever it is, as opposed to saying, can you tell us through a feasibility study what you think is best to do?
and unfortunately, that's not the way the process works with the MSBA. The MSBA is asking us, do we have an interest in working with them to come to that conclusion? If you want to ask me, do we need to do something? Yes, we do, but I'm not an engineer, I'm not, an architect, so I don't know, and or the mechanicals behind the building, I don't know that information. So this process of saying, yes, we know that there's deficiencies with the buildings, and the only way that we can address these, because Long Meadow financially is not going to be able to absorb 100% of this cost, is to work with a governmental agency that will give us, well, like last time, 40%. Hopefully they give us more this time than the last time. But that's the only way we're going to address those needs.
I guess the answer is, though, that what if the MSBA comes back and says the best solution is number 5, but as a community, we thought it was number 2 or 3? Wouldn't we be better off saying, we really want to go with numbers 2 or 3 and not give them the option of telling us the best solution is number 5? And I speak specifically of the 1 versus 2 middle school options. Whether we end up having to build a new one or repair them, they're gonna tell us based on, you don't put $50 million into fixing up a $40 million building. But that whole decision of 1 versus 2, I can't imagine that the MSBA knows that answer better than our community does.
I think, I'm not sure I would characterize it as the MSBA tells us. I think they, I've had the experience of working with the MSBA, and I think they genuinely want to partner with districts, and they want to get behind solutions that the community will get behind. So it's a sort of a parallel process. So let's say in December of 2019, the MSBA came back and said, you've been accepted into the eligibility period. From that point on, now you have, as a community, you have to start to put together the scope of a feasibility study, and then that would go to town meeting for approval. And so in the designing and developing the scope of that feasibility study, you're signaling to the MSBA what the community may or may not get behind. So there are communities that use this to consolidate. There are communities that use this to break apart already consolidated buildings. They want to work with the community to identify a solution that works for the community. It's not, if for example, if this community was wholly committed to the idea of 2 middle schools, then that would be the scope of the feasibility study. That would be the direction that we would work with them towards. But they'll want to know that. They'll want to know what is the sentiment of the school committee, what is the sentiment of the select board, what's the sentiment of the town. They're going to want to see that.
And there's no value in having that prior to the submission of the SOI, and specifically because I really thought the feasibility study was more of an engineering technical study of, how terrible your schools really are relative to their cost of recognizing that what it takes to bring them up to whatever they consider.
Well, the last time it was kind of the same. I mean, it was that, but it was also option 1 was renovate, rebuild, and option 2. And you remember there was like 4 or 5ve different options with the high school.
Let's not go there.
I know, but that's how we came up
about where we were.
Yeah, I know.
Time.
So, but and quite frankly, we have a permanent building committee now who's working with us up front, and I think that it changes the scope a little bit in regards to where we are this time versus last time, Mark. I think that we have a path and greater knowledge in town than we had last time.
Okay, Rich.
Mark?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Let Tom go and then.
My first round.
I don't care if it's the first round or not. Go ahead, Tom.
Okay. So
It starts with a raise of a hand.
That's it. So I think that, Mark's on to a good point, and for you to think about as a school committee, because if we already knew we're only going to need 1 building, that would make it a little easier than the state having to commit to 2 buildings at this, not knowing what we want to do. So it's worth thinking about. And now, when you look at this proposal, it says replacement renovation of the building structurally unsound, otherwise conditions seriously jeopardizing the health and safety of school children where no alternatives exist. And was this the same thing that was on last year's?
Yes.
And the year
Word for
before
word.
that? So, okay.
Well, what Tom quoted was that's the MSBA language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's,
Right.
okay, yeah.
Right.
Well, we would put a check mark in that box.
They force you to pick a box. You
force you
have
to
to
pick a box.
identify sort of what you see as the priority reason.
Mr.
And-
Foster would like to ask the question when you're
Well,
done.
I'm not, yes, when I'm done, yeah, thank you. And how is that determined? I mean, do they give you guidelines to answer that question?
Well, the other, so I'd have to pull up the application, but the
Yeah.
other criteria that are possible, overcrowding, I mean, we
Yeah.
have, we're not, when you consider the aggregate square footage of the two buildings, we don't have overcrowding. We have some overcrowded spaces that
Yeah.
are problematic, but on the whole, that doesn't fit. The other choices related to, I think, accreditation, that was an issue at the high school. There's not an accreditation agency. So those priorities are pre-listed by the MSBA. We have to pick the ones that fit best. The others were short-term enrollment growth, that didn't fit. Loss of accreditation, I mentioned. Some of the others, transition from a court order to approved racial balanced school districts, so that didn't apply either. So we just chose the priority that made the most sense for us.
Yeah. And we don't know, we have no idea of telling how close we got last year, the year before.
No way of knowing. They
No way
give
of
you
knowing.
zero feedback.
All right, so it isn't like we're twisting their arm by putting a check mark in this box. 'cause it
11
doesn't-
of the 70 applications that were submitted into the core program were approved last year. So
11 of 70.
Chances are, depending on the year, anywhere from 15 to maybe 25% of the applications are approved.
Okay, I will give the rest of my time to Mr. Foster.
Thank you. So noted. Let the congressional record start to roll. I think it was before you even got here, Marty, when the first SOI was put in, and there was a question asked at that point. I think Mark just thumped around with the same question again, and I'm going to come back with the same question again. What in the hell do you want to do? Do you want one school or two schools? I don't understand
Yeah.
why we got these two things floating, and you weren't here when redistricting took place on this little bitty zone on the other end of the town.
Familiar with it.
Can you imagine
Sure.
you're going to shut down one school and consolidate it one without public input prior to even getting to that point? I
Right.
just,
That-
are you
and that would be-
prepared?
That would be an important component of the process, is to kind of gather public input on that. And so you said, what do I want? The very first thing that has to happen is typically an enrollment study, right? And so you determine what future capacity do you need? And do you need do you have the student enrollment to sustain two middle schools? Or will your enrollment, could it be housed in a single school? I think that I totally understand how much Long Meadow values its neighborhood schools, but I also understand how much Long Meadow values 21st century learning spaces. And so that's the trade-off. And what is this community looking
Can
for?
I quote you on that?
Sure. I think, I know that there's certainly, educational benefits and economy of scale that you can gain in a consolidated building, but that also has to make fiscal sense, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I could sit here to say to you that, we would love a single middle school. Is that the most cost-effective solution? That's not for me to determine. That's why you have architects. That's why you do the feasibility study. And these feasibility studies, they're serious undertakings. I mean, these go way beyond, let's say, what the JCJ report provided to you in 2007 or whenever it was. So.
Yeah, I would find it hard to believe a feasibility study to come back and say, nah, town of Longview, you're better off to have two schools.
Well, it'll
But I
lay it
know-
out. I mean,
Yeah.
right. I mean, the JCJ study, suggested that, they gave you a conceptual estimate for a combined middle school.
All right. Well, I know when Marie Doyle first started, we asked her, said, Marie, what do you want to do? And she says, I want to consolidate at Williams.
Mhm.
And that was her stance.
Yeah.
And what I wondered at that point is that, what happens if we're approved and the recommendations come back?
Mhm.
We're going to go out on a limb. Comes back and we consolidate at Williams, and you can't pull it off in our town.
Then you lose the potential funding from the MSBA. So
Right.
there's sort of three places where you need approval, right? Right now, and then you need the approval of the feasibility study, and then you need the approval of the scope and the budget. And so, yes, I mean, and that happens to communities. There are communities that are invited in, that they go through the feasibility study, they get approval of the feasibility study, but ultimately the town, the community turns down the project. That happens.
One more real quick one. Based on everything you said, and
Yeah.
I agree with everything you said.
That'd be very disappointing, and I certainly wouldn't want that to happen.
And I think a lot of people have felt that we are at a point where like a consolidation would look
Yeah.
like the best alternative. But with that in mind, do you have any plans to start preliminary research out there in the community to see if this is palatable, or do we need to do some mid-course corrections?
Yeah, we have,
Yes.
we've talked about that, yeah.
I'll
Can I-
take, do you want to talk about Becky? Or-
Yeah, I was going to say that I've reported onto the board in the past that the moderator has a partnership that she's working on with the University of Warsaw and her employer, the University of Hartford. And it's a community engagement platform called In Dialogue. And later this year, probably in the fall, we plan to kind of roll this out. And and we have to pick a community question as a kind of, not a beta test, but as an exercise to test out this community engagement platform, which is free, by the way.
Yeah.
And we've talked about one school versus two as being that question, because we're not in it yet, so some of the, let's say, emotion maybe won't be as intense, but it also is a fairly, up or down kind of, opinion. So we looked at it as kind of a good question. So we'll start that process. I don't know what kind of binding effect that outcome will have, but we at least will engage the community on that discussion.
You want a motion? Or you-
I'll see if there's any other discussions or questions.
Well, I would just say that there's more than just two options, one school or two schools. There are probably 4 or 5 options, and I think that we should entertain all of them. My favorite, of course, is 2 middle schools in one building, but I'm sure that there are other favorites. So,
Anyway, Richard, before I take a motion, just so people at home understand, that the MSBA has proscribed, some fairly specific language by which, if we are going to adopt this, and there are 2 of these, that each one needs its own motion, and that was in our packet. So I'd ask that if there is a motion, that it follow the wording that was prescribed by the MSBA, if we wanted to go anywhere beyond this room.
Well, I can't get my computer to come back up.
And so I have the first one here.
They're both the same wording, but with a different school.
So the first one, I move, resolve to have convened, is this what you want me to
Right,
read?
yeah.
Yeah, that's
Convened in an open meeting on March 18th, 2019, prior to the SOI. I have to read the whole thing?
Yeah,
Submission,
we'll read it once.
closing date, the Select Board of Town of Long Meadow, in accordance with its charter, bylaws, and ordinance, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest form dated no later than April 12, 2019, for the Glenbrook Middle School located at 110 Cambridge Circle, Long Meadow, Mass., which describes and explains the following deficiencies and priority categories for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future. Replacement or renovation of a building which is structurally unsound or otherwise in a condition seriously jeopardizing the health and safety of the school children where no alternative exists. Replacement, renovation, or modernization of school facility systems such as roofs, windows, boilers, heating, and ventilation systems to increase energy conservation and decrease energy-related costs in a school facility. Replacement of or in addition to an obsolete building in order to provide for full range of programs consistent with state and approved local requirements, and hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting the statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or approval of an application or the awarding of a grant or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the town to file an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
Yeah. Bill, you're the clerk. Did you get all that? Yeah. Okay. You can breathe, too.
Motion's been made, is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made by Ms. Angelides and seconded by Mr. Foster. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? The vote is 5-0, and we should record that.
I just want to say, for my friends that are watching, they're really fuming and mad at me now because of the debt. We're just voting on what's needed. You recognize a need. If you guys don't want to spend the money, then vote against the override.
Yeah. Well, this is just a start anyway. We're not even sure it'll be picked up what year. What's the third year right now?
The third year in a row?
Yeah.
Third year in a row, and then prior to that, even at the time when the high school was being considered, there were statements at that time, so. This goes back 10 years at
Any
least.
good averages on how many years it takes for a pickup?
There are districts that never get picked up, and then there are districts that get picked up in the first year. You know, it's, they will say that it's not a queue, and I would tend to agree with that. I mean, we could be indefinitely applying, you know.
The high school took us 5 times.
Yeah. So then we go into the massive repair program.
And just about the time you've committed several $1 million to repair, that's when they pick you up.
Yeah.
And that's the problem.
Yeah.
Anyway, we also need a motion for the Williams Middle School one, and I believe that we can short this one a little bit, Marie, but go ahead if you'd like to make a
Should
motion.
I just say move like the previous one, or go read it again?
No, I think we can move to approve the motion as written, as submitted, as required by MSBA 4, and then just read the,
Williams Middle School located at 410 William Street, Long Meadow, Massachusetts.
yeah.
Second.
Okay, so that motion's been made by Ms. Angelides and seconded by Mr. Foster, and it's the same motion with the same wording, different location. Although, any other comments or questions or, no? Okay, hearing none, take a call for a vote. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? The vote is 5-0 on that one as well. Seeing no other business, thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
So much.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck.
Next item of business is a renewal of a seasonal liquor license for the Clubhouse Cafe, which is actually the Franconia Golf Course's liquor license, or cafe facility. So every year we wait to renew their liquor license until this time. Is there a motion to renew the liquor license of the Clubhouse Cafe?
So,
Okay, is there a second? Motion's been made by Mr. Lowe and seconded by Ms. Angelides. Is there any questions, comments?
Well, I have one question, Mark. The way this is showing up on my screen, is this a new form we're using?
No, this is, yeah, it looks like it's new. It was something new that I hadn't seen before. So I assume it's new,
And I
but
guess
it's
the X's when they're there means it's been taken care of, or?
that's what it looks like, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Debbie pretty much does a good job on this stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so seeing no questions or comments, all those in favor? Any opposed? The vote is 5-0. So again, it's motion by Mr. Foster, seconded by Bill. Did you second that? Or Marie?
I second it. He-
No, this is the...
Oh, the second.
I made
Bill.
the motion.
Oh, okay, I'll second.
Okay. Thank you.
Who's on first?
Now we have actually two one-day liquor licenses, and I'd like to do them one at a time. The first one is a one-day liquor license for the Knights of Columbus. I'm not quite sure what this means. It says it's a spelling bee fundraiser at St. Mary's Academy, but I guess they want a liquor license for the spelling bee competition.
People who are in the spelling bee, is that it? Is it going to be you, Mark, after a few beers?
So I'll make a motion to approve the one-day liquor license for the Knights of Columbus for the Spelling Bee fundraiser to be held on 4/6/19.
Great, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion's made by Mr. Foster, seconded by
No,
Marie.
it was,
No, I'm sorry, Mr. Locuso, I'm sorry.
We look alike.
Yeah, Mr. Locuso, seconded by Marie. Is there any other comments? All those in favor? Vote is 5-0. And now we have a one-day, another one-day liquor license.
Okay, so I'd like to move that we approve a one-day liquor license for the Long Meadow Lacrosse Booster Club for a comedy night event that will be held on April 27th, 2019.
Second.
Okay, again, motion made by Tom, seconded by Marie.
I have a question. Where is it being held? It's 735 Long Meadow
That's
Street.
the Long Meadow, that's the community house.
Is that, yeah, oh, community house, okay.
Yeah.
Isn't that, Jackie, that's the community house, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And just for the people at home, both of these have been reviewed by our police department and have been recommended for approval by the police department. Okay, seeing no other comments, any questions?
Don't we usually have something to the tip certification on here?
This-
too?
Yeah, that's on there.
It's on there.
Did I miss it?
You got to
At the end.
scroll all the way down. It's the last thing on the packet, in the packet.
Oh, yeah, sure, I did miss it.
Don't mess
Okay.
with Debbie House. She's got this stuff. Okay. Seeing no other comments, all those in favor? Vote is again 5-0. Thank you very much. So now we're going to move on to
Just two.
one of our least favorite things, which is appointing the registrars of voters. So,
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Manny Wenig as a registered voter to replace, or to just renew his position. He's already been on the board. Or been on
Second.
that thing, so.
Could I talk about that? I'm a little confused.
join the club.
Okay, so, we've been rotating back and forth, but we're not rotating, the only person coming up this year is the Democrats, so we're just keeping that person on. But we are putting a warrant article to be able to add a second Democrat, and then this will come back to us in June after the warrant article?
Oh, it won't come back till next year, even though there'll be a warrant article this year.
Well, can we do something
understand.
now to,
The warrant article hasn't been voted on, so
but if the warrant article's voted on, can we put the fourth person on the fourth person on in June?
Not until it's approved by the Attorney
yeah,
General's
I think
office.
that, right.
After
I don't
it's
think you have to wait till
approved.
June, it's when it's approved by the Attorney General.
Does it need Attorney General approval? It's not a bylaw. Isn't it an acceptance of a local statute?
Yeah, it's accepting of a statute.
Okay, you're right, it is accepted. I'm not quite sure if it takes place immediately after.
That's a good question.
So could you find out about that so we could get back to the gentleman who's been waiting to be,
I might have the information in here.
because I know he's been a really good registrar, and it's just been an issue with needing to fix for a long time.
Okay, so the motion is still out to
Right, to
reappoint Manny Wenig to his expiring term, to fill the term he's expired. We got a second?
Yeah, Marie said, didn't you say?
Yeah, I think it was seconded.
Oh, okay.
No, I didn't second
Okay,
it.
I didn't hear a second.
I'll
Okay,
second
sorry.
it.
No.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'll second it.
all right.
Okay. Any other questions? All those in favor? Vote is 5-0. Okay. I think that's
So
the
are you
only.
coming up with the answer now, or are you going to get back to us, Paul?
It looks like immediately upon acceptance, said registrar of the voters insofar as they relate to or require, it looks like it's upon acceptance.
So we would
You would do it in
then
May.
do it in May, appoint the fourth or fifth. Or it's the
Yeah.
fourth. Mhm. Okay,
So we
thank
have
you.
to send a letter out to the Democratic Town Committee and
Debbie-
submit 3 days.
Yeah, Debbie prepares that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Jackie, if you just have the notes indicate that we are asking that if the warrant article that would extend it to 4 registrars is approved, then we would ask that our town clerk remind to put on the select board agenda the appointment of a 4th member shortly after that town meeting. That's what I, right, Marie, that's what I thought I.
Yeah, just so it doesn't slip through the cracks again.
Okay. Okay. Then the next item is the appointment of quarterly board, people to fill our board vacancies. And the first is for the Audit Committee, where we have several vacancies, but 2 people who applied for the Audit Committee, Peter Nasser and William Screery.
Are they, which wanted what?
Well, one's
They
gonna
both
take
wanted
one,
the-
and one's going to take
No, they're-
one of the others. Oh, they can both take?
No, there's a 3-year term.
All right.
One can take a 3-year term and one nobody had indicated anything.
They didn't.
No.
Oh. What do we do with it? What do you suggest, Mark?
I suggest we
remember.
appoint Mr. Nasser to the 3-year term and Mr. Skiri to the 1-year associate term.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Motion's made by Marie and seconded by Bill Lowe. Any comments? All those in favor? Vote passes 5-0.
I move to appoint James Ryan to Conservation Commission, 1-year associate term expiring 6/30/19.
Before you do that, do you also plan on appointing him to the Energy Committee? That's
Oh.
all right, Marie.
Oh, that makes sense. And to appoint him to one of the 3-year terms expiring 6/30/19 for Energy and Sustainability Committee.
Second.
Okay. So the motion's made by Ms. Angelides and seconded by Mr. Foster to appoint James Ryan to a 1-year associate's term on the Conservation Committee and a 3-year term on the Energy and Sustainability Committee. Any comments? All those in favor? The vote is 5-0.
I move to appoint Robert Humberston and Andrea Schultz to the Cultural Council for 3-year terms expiring 6/30/2021.
Second.
Yeah. Motion's made by Marie and seconded by Tom Lacusa to appoint Robert Humberson and Andrea Schultz to the 3-year terms on the Cultural Council. Any other comments, questions? All those in favor? The vote is 5-0, and they are appointed, and I assume that our town clerk will notify them of those appointments. Congratulations to those folks. They need to, if they're watching, should show up at the town clerk's office. They do need to be sworn in before they can just show up at a committee meeting and participate.
And do their conflict of interest and ethics training, or their ethics training.
I think everybody needs to do that.
Yeah, they do
This
too.
year, yeah.
This year. The next item on our agenda is a recommendation by our Audit Committee for the annual appointment of our auditors, Melanson Heath.
It's not an annual appointment, it's an extension of their current contract from a 3 to a 5-year.
Thank you,
It's
Paul.
extending it 2 more fiscal years.
Okay, it's to extend their contract for Melanson Heath, and they've sent us a letter describing why they believe this is the right thing to do. Is there any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to,
So moved.
motion is to extend the auditor's contract by 2 years, right, Paul?
2 fiscal years,
2
yes.
fiscal years.
FY
which would
20 and
include
21.
Fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 21, which means that next year's audit and the following year's audit, not the current year audit.
Correct. They have the.
They
current-
already are auditing 2019 when it ends.
Right.
It'll be 2020. Okay, so Marie's made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second's made by Mr. Lowe. Any comments or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor? The vote is 4-0. Mr. Foster is out of the room temporarily. Moving right along. The next item is right where we want to be. It's the Capital Planning Committee's recommendation. So we've asked Dr. Stephen Metz, who's the chair of our Capital Planning Committee, who I told would be last, to come forward along with Mario.
Mario crystal ball.
With Mario, it's, you know,
Steve, do you need to project, or, there you go, okay.
last could have been 11 o'clock Tuesday, so, you know, it's only 8:20. So just to ask you to, you've sent us some recommendations, but I know you have a quick presentation for us as part of that on the
Yes.
capital plan.
I'm going to read it to, just for sake of time. This is a summary of our evaluation of the various proposals for the capital plan this coming year. The report has been given to the members of the select board, and I think, did you get a copy? Yeah. Okay, this is our fiscal year 2020 capital budget recommendations. The report was provided to the select board on February 25th of this year. As part of the Longmeadow, Massachusetts capital budget process, the Capital Planning Committee received from the town manager proposed projects for funding consideration for fiscal year 2020. In addition, we heard presentations by the town manager, the Director, Department of Public Works, the Chief of the Longmeadow Fire Department, and community residents that provided further information regarding the proposed capital projects. A total of 17 projects were presented by the town manager, which I gave you as Appendix A. Additional projects were proposed by the Long Meadow Injury Task Force, which had been appointed by the Select Board, and these were included in the review process. Approval of the projects as proposed by the town manager, including contributions to the fire truck replacement fund and funds for project development and contributions to the fire truck replacement fund, development reserve, would require that $1,976,070 be appropriated from the Capital Stabilization Fund. Additional projects for which the funding was requested of the Community Preservation Fund and projects to be funded from the Water and Sewer Enterprise Funds were presented to us for information only. And I have to thank the members of the Community Preservation Committee because of our collaboration with them to minimize duplication of several projects. The Long Meadow Finance Director has advised that approximately $1,900,000, approximately 2.75% of the general fund, has been allocated to the capital budget appropriation. The final recommendation of the Capital Planning Committee, which is in Appendix B, which you've received, and I'll talk about that in a minute, represents the product of extended discussions directed to prioritizing capital projects according to the following criteria, ranked in order of precedence. The first one is consideration is those mandated by the governing bodies. The second is a consideration of safety improvements provided by the projects. The third rank is given to projects which will improve the efficiency of various departments. And finally, projects which will enhance community quality of life and community aesthetics. As noted, capital projects involving roads, water, and sewer that are funded through the enterprise funds were not included in the committee's allocations. Additional projects proposed for funding through the so-called, quote, Chapter 90, unquote, funds from the Commonwealth were also not evaluated. However, the committee recognizes the importance of considering all these projects in the context of the town's short and long-term capital plans. Indicated in the table I provide you is the anticipated capital fund allocation placed at the last recommended project that can be funded at this level. And I'll talk about that also in a minute. Because of the significant difference between the proposed allocation and the financial requirements of the proposed projects, not all requests could be accommodated. The projects listed below the level of the projected capital allocation are ranked in the order the committee recommends adoption should additional funds become available. Note that the measures recommended by the Energy Task Force are included in the supplemental list. The committee recognizes the importance of these energy-saving measures and urges the Select Board to seek a method to fund these projects. The Capital Planning Committee will continue working with the Town Manager and the Director of Public Works to provide regular quarterly review of the physical progress of the capital projects approved at town meeting in order to inform the Select Board. The committee would like to thank Town Manager Stephen Crane, Director of Department of Public Works Mario Mazza, Fire Chief John Dearborn, Schools Chief Financial Officer Thomas Mazza, and their staffs for the support and informative testimony during our review process. Respectfully submitted, the members of the Planning Committee: Stephen A. Metz, Chair; Dan Healy, John Skypeck, James Law, Ira Smolowitz, and Peter Vanash.
Thank you, Dr. Metz.
Oh, no, actually got a bunch of them.
I don't know if there, anybody has any other questions about the capital proposals that the Capital Planning Committee has submitted. I have a couple, I guess, but
Is that, I think this is missing a number, is that 2,155,450?
Are you looking at the right one?
Yeah.
2155457? That one?
Oh, I see.
that was the,
If you take all the projects that we rank, that's what it would come to. The number that you see, what is it? In blue, at approximately just under major infrastructure, that's just below the amount of money that the Mr. Vesterzik told me that we would have available to us.
I see.
I'm not even sure where you're looking.
Okay, if you look at the first page, down at the bottom, it says 2 major infrastructure. And the just to the right of that is a number in blue, $1.897 million.
Next to Magnolia Circle drainage, go all the way to the right. And total cost to this point.
That's just a running tally.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So, Dr. Metz, I guess my first question is, did you make any major changes to the priorities or recommendations that you received from the town manager? And if so, what was your rationale?
If there's not a whole lot of major changes. The ones that we made were on the basis of information received from town residents, and after consultation with the various people I recognized in my presentation.
All right.
We did change the ones that we put down towards the bottom were the installation of snow guards and at the Greenwood, and the HVAC modifications at the high school, in deference to some that we thought were a little bit more important, because we were working under constraint of budget.
Okay. The other question I guess I have is related to the sidewalk, pavement, and guardrails, I guess. And the question is, how did those numbers get generated based on, they're big numbers. I mean, $400,000 additional for sidewalk construction. I think it's like 387 something for pavement if you add the two different sources, and yet we left some other things like energy conservation projects off the list.
The numbers for pavement, those are projects that are ongoing as part of the scheduled replacement, and I'll ask Mr. Mazza to address that issue.
So, I think I understand your question is, we give the town manager a list of streets we'd like to do at the beginning of the process, that total X. And we realize that we can't do everything that we always want to do, and so we have to adapt to something less. But if I'm hearing you, Mark, you want to know how did those numbers get set at that level and you not fund other...
Right.
I'll talk
Did I hear you right?
I'll talk about the energy project in a minute.
Right. I guess because when you come up with a number like $400,000 for sidewalks, it's like we're going to put in $400,000 for sidewalks. I'm saying, can we get almost everything we want for $325,000 for sidewalks, and then we'd have $75,000 to do some of those energy conservation projects, or the $400,000, is that really this street plus this street plus this street, and the sum of those estimates is $400,000?
So I think the sum would be $1 million or more. And so because of prior year funding, we try to stay within the general realm of what we get every year. So we build it towards those numbers. If there's deductions based on other needs, I think the committee then adjusts, and then whatever we get at the end of the day, then the town meeting, we'll go back and we'll adjust. We usually take out the best, and we'll leave the worst in. Sidewalks and streets.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I guess that's fine.
Did I not answer? Because I'll try a different way.
No, I understand your answer. But I guess the question is, is that somebody's determined that the 6th Street for paving is more important than the energy conservation. In other words, was the pavement taken as a lump, or was it taken as 8 projects and they all just ended up above some of the other projects?
You don't want to ask me that, because what they're responding to is the town manager's capital plan recommendation, and so those numbers get set in that form.
But isn't the capital planning committee looking at, so they're told $400,000 or nothing for
No,
pavement?
but what I'm saying, how do the numbers get to them in the format they're in? And it's not, basically, we adjust numbers on the broader categories, like sidewalks, guardrail, pavement preservation, to make sure that we balance to the projected allocation based on the select board's policy. So we know that, the center school fire alarm is I say hard number, it's an estimated number for a specific project. So if to get to the number, we have to cut $25,000, for example, we're short, when you add it all up, we just take it off of sidewalk, or, it's not like we drop a street or a length of sidewalk, it's more just the dollar values to get the numbers to round out. The energy efficiency projects were given to me after I had already submitted the capital plan to the capital planning committee. They're, quite frankly, outside the process. That said, I completely agree with Dr. Metz. I shouldn't say completely agree. I want to see, I think they should be, we should find a way to do them, maybe in the fall, if we have free cash, because it's not a big number. I will say, I want to give it a chance to evaluate the results we got, certainly in the fire station. To be honest with you, they're having issues with their HVAC now after the projects were done, so I want to figure that out. But in terms of the adjustments, Mark, when I make them, it's just about rounding the numbers out and getting them in the wash.
Right, but my question was for the capital planning committee. You know, did they consider some subset of the $400,000 for sidewalks and the $380,000 for streets and those, whatever it is for guardrails, in order to work on some of the other projects sooner rather than later?
Yeah, I can answer that question. The answer is no. We do not have the competence to decide whether, this street is very important, this one is not. There's no way we can do anything except the information provided by the Department of Public Works. That would be silly.
Okay, Marie?
Yeah, and I think that it came in late, as we said, and the town manager said it would be something that the select board could decide if they're going to make any changes in regards to that, because it did come so late.
You're going to
into
talk
the
about the
process.
energy thing?
Pardon?
You were talking about the energy thing, or
Yes.
the? Okay,
Mhm.
I'll address that now. After I received the recommended budget, or the proposed budget from the town manager, I was called by the chair of the Energy Task Force, who told me about this project that they have been working on, and urged me to try and find a way to get it into the, at least our recommended budget process. We try to take into account both the importance of the energy project. We happen to feel that's very important. But we wanted to do that in respect of the priorities given me by the town manager, who also informed me that he had not yet had a chance really to evaluate it and see what kind of things he could do to arrange reimbursement from the various companies. So he and I had extremely productive conversations about that, and so this is kind of how we worded it. And I think, as Mr. Pacierzik said, there are some chances that we can have some money the next town meeting to allow this to go forward. That'll help us have the information that the town manager can put together.
I just want to comment on the pavement number and the sidewalk number. That you see that most of the projects are project-specific, refurbishing of Marine One or the fire alarm at Center School. With the pavement and the sidewalk, if they don't hit the number exactly, that money is just moving forward. So it then becomes part of, added to next year's allotment of, if it's, 400,000. So, they may only expend 390 as an example. So the extra $10,000 is just going to move forward.
Right, and I guess my comment would be, if we knew that, maybe we could spend that $10,000 this year on an energy-saving project 6 months earlier, and because I see that somehow last year, I think the number was $80-something thousand carried over or something like that we weren't able to do. And it's just that we allocated the money, we kind of held it in abeyance, and in theory, we could have spent it on something of real value more immediate value, I guess.
It's also going to be one of those things where we're going to have to go out to bid and we don't really know.
Right, yeah, I mean, you don't know how far you can get with 400,000, I get it.
If we had a town council form of government, you could do that, because then the council could reappropriate the money themselves versus having to go back to town meeting and change, warrant articles and all that fun stuff.
But we don't and we can't.
Yeah.
Bill? Sorry, Richard. I don't know.
We have trouble with names
I'm
tonight.
throwing out random names here.
Yeah, just whatever. Joe Blow. Boiler replacement, Blueberry Hill, Phase 2. How many phases is on this project?
Well, I guess what I would tell you is that's the second of the two there. So that will be done, that school will be done after that boiler. And I think the question you're really asking is how many more boilers do we need to do?
No, I'm asking you on Blueberry.
Blueberry, this is number 2. This
Okay.
is 2 of 2.
Yeah, the other ones will just be surprises. I like them better, surprises.
Okay.
They express a little discomfort on the distribution. I realize it's not part of this and this, that, and the other, but the distribution of CPA funds. there's $350,000 in CPA funds. It looks like it's being dedicated to playground surfaces and playground equipment. And it would certainly seem like we got a lot of projects in town, and that took up a lot of cash. That's just when you review this, you say, wow.
Mr. Foster, not to
That's
step
not,
on-
you don't do CPA.
That's true, but I understand your concern, but just speaking a little bit, and from what I've heard from Mr. Weiss, they pretty much decide what they're going to spend their money on.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm just saying, I have the right to be dissatisfied with that disbursement of cash. It seems to be an awful lot of cash being dispersed on very large projects. It's still taxpayers' dollars.
Richard, just keep in mind that CPA money has
I
several
understand.
buckets. Okay.
I understand. I just said,
Okay.
I'm just satisfied to see that much show up. That's all that's on this program, $363,000. And there's 2 playgrounds, and then a roof replacement. A roof replacement, I thought that was maintenance.
CPA also has money for the CPA, the capital, the community preservation has $14,000 for tree planting.
Okay, well, that's not shown on this sheet.
Right, on this sheet. They have another $5,400 for Stores House, but the rest is Russell Field, Turner Field, Wolf Swamp Field, Bliss and Laurel Parks, playgrounds, and library. Those, so you're right, there's a lot of money. I'm pulling that up.
They're not on the 2020 program then?
So these are the projects the town proposed.
Yeah.
The ones I think Mark is listing off are private citizens who requested.
Oh, okay, so I don't have the total listed here. So I'm just saying on this program that I'm dismayed.
And if I could, just one more, the 227 for the playground
Yeah.
at Blueberry was not approved. They spent that money somewhere else.
It would look like a CPA, it looks like from all accounts on the spreadsheet, it was approved.
It was one we asked for that we were not approved.
Oh, okay, so it's misleading spreadsheet.
Yeah,
then.
Blueberry.
This is our control document.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
Blueberry.
I'll roll all those comments back in.
So, but I would just like to make a comment that based on the proposals so far, that, I'm just going to read through capital. This is just general capital. So there's Capital Planning Committee capital recommendations of $1.92 million, $1,916,000. That's what we're hearing tonight. Okay? We have Water and Stabilization Fund capital projects of $65,000 and Sewer Stabilization Fund projects of $65,000, both of which are a quarter of a dump truck and a quarter of a backhoe. Okay? We also have a Chapter 90 street funds from Chapter 90 of $478,000, and then Chapter 90 money carried over of $94,667. So there's another $573,000. This is, I'm reading this off the warrant.
Oh, okay, so it's not
Not off of here.
Not off of
I'm just going
here.
through this, Marie, okay?
Okay.
We've got sewer projects totaling $1.1 million, and we've got landfill capping of $600,000, storm sewers on Willowbrook Road and Magnolia Circle of $625,000 total, and potential Wolf Swamp Fields of $1.5 million, and community preservation recommendations of $390,000, for a total capital expenditure proposed in our warrant of $6.95 million. That's nearly $7 million of capital projects, which by my recollecting or calculating is 9.5% of our overall budget and 12.9, just about 13% of our tax revenue.
Can I continue? I was in the process of going down my list when you went off.
No, I'm sorry, I thought you were done.
No, I wasn't even started.
Oh, okay. My only point here, Richard, and then you can turn it, is we're way above our 3.5% capital.
Yeah, but we've had that discussion before. The figures you got they're true, but they're misleading in the fact that that's not the dollars in total capital. You're mixing all the funds together.
Total capital, all the funds together.
Yeah, but
Go ahead.
Yeah, I know, but the capital program that we fund with our policy is a very small policy. It's just, what, 1.5 mil, what is total?
No, it's 1.92 million.
Actually, it's the one where, it's $1.9 million is what we have in the general fund.
Yeah, that's
The others
the
you're talking
capital.
about, the others you're talking about are the enterprise funds, which are their own pockets of money that what the town manager, I won't take my time, what he's tried to do is leverage the different funds so that we can accomplish projects that we would not ordinarily be able to accomplish. Is that a reasonable way to say it, Steve?
Yes, Steve, I think there are different funds, and there are things that are priorities that, for the sake of a ban, can be done at relatively low borrowing cost. Otherwise, if you choose to fund some of those like drainage projects and things like that 100% through general funds, then you're, basically obliterating your streets, sidewalks, potentially vehicles that need to be replaced don't get replaced, and that's why I kind of sliced them up the way we did, so we could try and balance everything out.
Go ahead, Richard.
Okay, thank you.
The floor is yours.
I tell you, I'm going to bring an armed guard in to keep the floor. On your pavement program,
Yes.
I would like to request in the future that you show what your real requirements are.
What do you mean by that?
Not what you think you can get, not what you historically think. I would like to know how many thousands or millions of dollars you could use this year to bring your roads up to the standard that they need to be on a set program. Whatever you determine is a 15-year, 20-year program. These figures are not truly real.
I agree with you.
Okay, and I would like to see it, and I'd like to see us start talking these figures so that people are aware when we say this that we're not kidding, that the needs are that great, but this is only how much we can afford. My printout only shows 2 or 3 pieces of equipment. How many pieces of equipment did you actually get this year has been approved so far?
Oh, I think we agreed on 3. I think I requested 5 or 6.
Okay, and I see then a dump truck and a loader, and, pardon?
You're right.
And what was the other one there?
Utility
Is it-
machine.
Utility machine.
Pardon?
Utility machine.
Yeah, sidewalk plowing machine?
Yep.
Okay. Mark, you should be able to chime in on this pretty quick. There's less than $200,000 coming out of equipment. And you and I think previously figured that we had to be at the tune of, what, 350, somewhere's up in there to keep up with funding our equipment properly.
This is over 300,000 when you take all the funds, Rich.
yeah.
You're only looking at the general fund. Water and sewer is supplementing that.
Oh, yeah, I see that, Paul.
Okay, but the total is over 300,000 for those 3 pieces of equipment.
Right, I see that.
Okay.
But I was just talking about what we needed. And but you might be right. How much, what was the total? 170?
There's
90,
170,
55.
220.
How much, 295?
It's 310.
310? Okay. And I think if we go back to even 6, 7 years ago, Dr. Metz, do you remember what the figure was that we said we needed to spend every year?
I do not, sorry.
It was pretty high, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's in
to
that
keep up with
ballpark.
our fleet requirements.
It's in that ballpark.
The Wolf Swamp field, I guess we've got an actual plan now, don't we? And I guess we could debate all day long the priorities of it and whatever, so I guess this is not the place to get into that, other than acknowledge it is one unbelievable amount of money.
We have a plan to do the project in the most efficient way possible with the least cumulative disruption
Right.
to sports activities, and that is doing it all at once versus phasing it over a number of years.
Right.
So after doing the research, cumulatively, when you compound disruption season over season by phasing it, and when you factor in the loss of efficiency and quite frankly, according to our engineers, a worse product,
Right.
we have figured that doing it all at once for that amount of money is the way to go. I think the Wolf Swamp Fields being a priority has been affirmed by the CPA's request for, and I did circulate. I think maybe Mark was copied on it, but they will commit their if the 100,000 that they've committed for Wolf Swamp is approved at town meeting, that'll go against the 1.5.
Okay. I was just saying it's a big project.
It's a big project, but I would say
1.5
it's our most heavily used recreational asset, and I think it's one of those things where let the voters
I guess we've
see.
never seen that demonstrated, though we've often asked for a recreation plan to be brought for the board. I don't think we've ever truly seen that total plan.
There's an open space plan. In fact, I think Barry's in the process of trying to rewrite it. It's up for renewal again.
I mean, as far as the usage and who's in these and the deficiency, we talked about, you and I talked a lot about it.
I mean, it's not a part of the master plan, but Barry has all that data, and she will, I think I saw something in writing recently, she said it's our most heavily used. It's actually in the description.
I hear
The
that
warrant.
too, but I've never seen it shown
Okay.
on who's using them and what's using them and the overlap.
She
and
could
usage
certainly
pattern.
produce that.
Okay. Hey, another question. The chapter, it looks like chapter 90 was what, 690? Is that true?
There's two allotments, one for 478 and one for 94.
Okay, well, my spreadsheet must be old. I show 550 and 140
I don't think it's that much.
on the chapter 90. One was for, it was pavement preservation list for chapter 90 at 550, and then it was 140 for Magnolia Circle drainage improvements.
Right.
The question I would have is that, I realize you can't use chapter 90 on drainage improvements, but also we had that other discussion about Long Meadow Street needing to do the survey to be able to possibly get it into the 24 tip program, which was, I guess, $90,000 to $100,000 required for that, and that we've taken 140 from that program and put it into something that we have been touting as our stormwater utility should be taken care of, such as Magnolia drainage improvements. I don't know, I'm just saying what appears on the sheet, and that's why I'd question, because the money is there, it just depends on where we put it. And yet, the only thing I know is right now, we're not moving forward on the survey on Long Meadow Street.
So let me ask it back to you, because I'm not sure I understand the question. The 550 that you quoted for Chapter 90?
Right.
Are you suggesting?
And you've got a list someplace for that.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's in the documents.
Right.
Actually, it's closer to $1 million because it takes into account the general fund
Right.
money too. Are you suggesting using 140 of that for Magnolia?
No,
Or taking
no, this
100
sheet
out of
that-
that and funding the survey?
This sheet that I had is showing 140 going towards Magnolia Circle drainage improvements.
Right.
Out of the Chapter 90.
No. If I understand that correctly, that is going to be the bond fund
There's
for stormwater?
There's $200,000 an article for a bonding of Magnolia Circle drainage.
Okay, I had the wrong figures
Okay.
here then. That's what mine showed.
That's what confused me.
I guess I thought this was a finish, and this must have been a preliminary.
I think that was our submittal, to be honest with you, and I think
Okay,
Mr.
then
Metz,
then
Dr.
half
Metz
of what
is...
I'm talking about may not have any relevance then, because it may have been approved in another fashion.
Could be more than half.
You don't want to get me started, Steve. Anyway, we need to move Long Meadow Street forward. And it's not over until the fat lady sings, that's all I can say. But there's a lot of things I'd rather give up and have that program moving forward, because that's the future of our community.
Understood.
That's very, very important. And it's already paid its royalties, because you've done ribbon cutting on Converse Street. It's always nice. We're going to have the L Street, possibly. Okay. Mark, since the rest of this sheet may not be accurate, I think I'll just drop off.
Okay, Marie?
Stephen, where would you, if we were going to look to fund the engineering project that Richard was discussing, where would you look in the budget, or Paul, for the money?
Type
Where
of
would
money,
you-
how much money are we talking about?
100,000.
He says
100.
90 to 100.
Yeah. Likely 90 change.
I would probably just go to free cash at this point. If you wanted at this point in time, I'd go to free cash. There's an article to transfer like $200,000 into the operational stabilization fund. I would just lower that and put it in there.
So you wouldn't be, the discussions about capital should just, so you're talking about doing it somewhere other than capital, so.
Okay.
we
It's not a
could-
capital item.
Yeah.
No, it's
We
not.
could
It's
continue.
Chapter 9.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me, I have another idea for that just popped into my head, but it's not within our ability to approve. It has to be approved by somebody else. Maybe we could work on that.
Okay.
I don't think it'll be done in time for town meeting, necessarily.
Well, could you share with us by Thursday?
We have 100,000 in local community mitigation. The trick is, as I've noted many times, you have to demonstrate significant adverse impacts to get the money, but I think we could make the argument that that section of Long Meadow Street has never been looked at, and we want to begin evaluating the condition of the roadway or some kind of survey, and maybe the gaming commission would allow us to use that money for that project.
How about if we hedged our bet and took the 100,000 out of the money that you're gonna put in reserve, and then we can put the money back to replace it?
I mean, I think the thing where we disagree, and I said this the other night, Richard, I was just at the JTC. This isn't as close around the corner as you think it is. And I think that if this carried over till the fall for free cash appropriation, or we did it, or we built it into the capital planner budget next year, we really wouldn't lose any ground on the TIP project, because they're not even programming that far out yet.
They're looking at 24 right now.
I know, but our current project is way ahead of this one, is already on the line for 23 or 24.
Right, 23.
He's
Or
hoping
24.
He's hoping to combine it.
It's still 23.
Or 24.
Okay. With the part.
I just need you to hear me on this.
I hear you.
They're not programming out that far yet.
I've heard every other person that wants to fight programmatic approaches do this too. It's hard to look 4 years in the distance and say it's important, but this is important for us to at least do our work in advance. Stephen, it's
there's no
$100,000, and the money doesn't matter we spend it this year or 2 years from now. It'll never be more, and the study is still good. That's the thing. That's why normally, if this was something that I was saying that's going to be approved next year, I'd acquiesce and back off. But this is something we can do now, and we're getting ready. And Long Meadow Street, that's a pretty good priority.
I agree with all of that. It's more, what is the value? It's like the net present value of the money.
Right.
In terms of the arc of that larger project. That's all I'm saying.
But you're taking 200 and putting it into reserve.
Listen, if you guys want to put it as a free cash article to do it, I'm on board.
I didn't give you the floor back.
But you're not getting anywhere, and I'm the chair. So let's move on.
Well, we could-
Okay, I'd like to place a motion that we reorganize.
Okay.
That motion's out of order. So I just want to, Paul, make sure that I understand, and this is between Paul and more Paul than Mario or something. What I've read is that the capital plan that we're being proposed tonight has pavement preservation 1, 337, 454. And then it has something called pavement preservation 2, 87, 546. Right?
There's two different funding sources.
Right.
On
for
the
two
warrant
different
article,
funds, okay.
yes.
But then there's also the Chapter 90 money we're going to get from the state,
There's two articles for Chapter 90.
which is $478,362, and the other one's $94,667.
Correct.
Which was last year's Chapter 90 money we didn't spend. all
No,
of it.
it's additional money that came
Oh,
above
right,
and
okay,
beyond.
right. It's money that came after we got
Right.
things. So I added them all up, and you get a hair shy of $1 million, 998,039.
Yes.
Okay, so I guess the question is, it's nice, and Richard's the first one I'll tell you, we could spend 25 times that. But I think people need to understand, what are we getting for $1 million? Where's the list of roads? Because that's what people are voting on at town meeting. They're not going to vote on $1 million, they're going to vote on roads. And those aren't in,
They are. Well,
they're somewhere, but they're nothing in what I've seen.
So,
You have a schedule. You have a
So-
schedule.
But the schedule's this long, Bill, and clearly we only deduct some of them.
Remember that neat schedule you gave us last year? It showed this year's program?
it's in the capital. So when I sent everybody the link to the Google Drive that had all of the documents, if you look at pavement preservation it is a Word document, but in it is a scan of a map that shows this year and then the list of streets. And it actually has 18 and 19 bids of all those streets that got done to set the unit price, and then it has the FY20 recommendation.
I can read them to you, Mark, if you want.
Yeah,
But
just
I
for
will
the
tell
record,
you
yeah.
that my memory of it is when I submitted this, Maple Road from Hazardville to Shaker was the road, the arterial we're gonna try to do this year. And I think the plan now
You
is
don't mean Maple Road.
Maple.
Maple
Maple
Road.
from
It
Hazardville
was a shaker.
to Shaker was the arterial road we were gonna try to resurface this coming construction season. William Street has unraveled faster than that. So that, I'm gonna read to you the list that we proposed to Stephen in the fall, but it has changed, and it might change again on the residential streets. If you give me 1 second, I'll read them to you.
I mean, I can name 2 or 3 roads that have just fallen apart totally
Right.
in the last 3 weeks.
Althea Drive, Lee's Lane, Pinewood Drive, Ellington Road, Meadowlark Drive, Maple Road, Hazardville to Shaker, Woodlawn Road, and Elm Ave.
And
are
that's
the
$1 million
2020
And that's $1 million
proposed.
worth of paving.
That is, yep, just over $1 million in paving.
We were discussing this before. Can we do $1 million in a season?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We can't, because you were saying you didn't complete last year's, someone was saying in the
No,
discussion?
I think
No,
What
money
they-
came in after everything was bid.
two things.
Okay.
Money did, Chapter 90 money came in afterwards, supplemental that the governor released.
Okay.
Sometimes they call it pothole money, I don't know if it had a title this time. And then oftentimes, when we bid them, they come in a little less, and so sometimes there's extra. 2 years ago, we did a phase 2. We had so much extra money that we could do 2 or 3 more streets. We put it out in the spring and did it. This year, we decided instead of doing that, we're just going to roll it into next year's program.
How many miles are you getting for the total?
I don't know that I have
You
the miles.
didn't
on
have the
that.
miles?
It might be there.
Okay. Oh, no, don't worry. It was just a general question. I just wonder what it's running for, the mill and overlays?
Mill and overlay.
Yeah. Do you know what it's running per mile, roughly?
I don't.
Okay.
It is broken down, I thought, the unit price on the FY, on the 18 and 19 bids they have in that document.
Marie, I must say, though, that last year, the last road that was paved the day it snowed. It paved it,
Yeah.
and then it snowed. It was so warm, the pavement was so warm, the snow melted.
Was that your street?
Yeah.
That's right. You got your street paved last year, didn't you?
You don't, right?
No, this was a couple years ago. Tanglewood's done. I think we did Circle this year.
Captain's looking like the crater of the moon down there, Captain
And they don't
Road.
even want to do this,
And
the
Avondale gets
design on
paved.
yours.
You should see Crestview. And I was looking at the list
Crestview
today,
gets
and I'm like
drainage
2024 or something like that.
It
There's
seems,
a bunch of roads that are just
seems to
total.
me there was Tanglewood, there was a project on Tanglewood
There was?
last year.
No, it was a mess. You wouldn't come and pick me up anymore. You said the street was too bad.
Right around the
That was
bend.
asphalt too. Yeah, it was
Coventry
everything.
next, right.
It was
Well,
everything.
Mark, to your point, I mean, there are people who obviously complain about the condition of their roads a lot, and there are a lot of roads that are bad. I mean, I think the problem is unexpectedly, and I'm blown away by it this year too. William Street, like, all of a sudden just fell apart, and was not nearly that bad last year, and now all of a sudden, like, it's, almost not drivable, and that's going to be an expensive project.
You get a lot of water in sub-base.
And so it's, these are the types of things that I think just not for, this, I think it's more for, if there's anybody left not bored to death watching at home, priorities do shift and there's more work. Not more, we have the capacity to do more work, we just don't have the funding to do more work.
Well, but for example, Mario, there's a section of, I think it's Glenbrook Road, okay? It's probably 200 yards. It's literally turned to gravel, and yet it's not on the list, and I don't know what we're gonna do, but, but somebody's gonna say, well, the rest of the road's in fine shape, but that 200 yards is a disaster. Do we consider saying, look, we're gonna make a cut here, and we gotta totally redo, I think it's because it's the shade, and it's, do you look at that stuff?
Yes,
Because
we
it
do.
seems like all we're doing is full road, which is great, but it's sections that are really bad.
So for these contracts, we generally look at full roads. With help from capital planning and the select board, town manager, we have purchased a paver. We haven't got it yet. So those sections and this section on William Street would be a good candidate if it wasn't part of our project. We'd mill out those several hundred feet and then pave it, and then the rest of the road would be fine, and we could get another 10 years out of it before we had to put it on a list like this. So we know where they are. I mean, I could tell you Long Meadow Street in front of Berkshire Bank, Long Meadow L, right, I can't think of the house number, but there's a barrel there. There's a handful of ones we're gonna attack this year, but they don't really qualify for this type of
Corner of Long Meadow
work.
Street in Farmington is a,
Long Meadow Street in Farmington. Yes,
right.
right. So.
And it's like the one in front of Berkshire Bank, it's the same.
Yep, same problem. There's a utility patch, it's unraveled. A lot of the road is okay, but that section is
But
not.
what money do you use for that, I guess, Mario?
Sometimes it's extra money that's left in paving preservation. Other times, our operating budget has like pothole money. I think the number's like 50 grand. Don't quote me on that, but that's my
Because
memory
my
of
question
it.
is, would we be better off taking a small amount of this money and spreading it into 20 of those or 25 of those areas around the town, as opposed to saying we're going to do some whole street. And one of these streets that you just listed, say we're only going to do a section of that, because then we can address the real bad roads in town, because because at some point, even your paver that you've got is going to run out of money, not run out of paving. And that would be a shame in my mind, because it is these 100 yards or less kind of areas.
I think, due to economies of scale, I would not recommend adding them to this program. Now, we could talk about deducting $100,000 like we did for spot repair for
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm
sidewalk.
not adding it to those programs. I'm taking them off of that to put that money into the short.
Potentially in the future, that could make sense to do that. I see that.
Ironically, and you don't believe it, but nobody wants to believe it, the best bucks that you can spend in asphalt is on good roads.
New roads, yeah.
Yeah.
Preventative
Sure.
maintenance.
Absolutely.
It's been proven time after time. Once they get to the shape we're in,
Yep.
until we reconstruct them, we're doing spot maintenance. We're wasting money.
Crack seal.
Not negatively wasting money,
No, I
we have to
understand.
do it.
Crack seal
Yeah.
is far cheaper than new asphalt,
Yeah.
but it will extend the life of a road. 5
Avondale
years.
Road, 3 years from now, they should be crack sealing your road.
Yep.
And that is
They
the
even sell
best
sealers
return
that
for
go
the
right on top,
dollars.
Yeah, but you
almost
look
like a
at-
new coat of paint.
I mean, you look at roads like Burbank Road, or, those, or Redfern, or those kinds of, those
Yeah.
roads, that's all they are, crack
Right.
seal. But
They're buying us a few more years so we can fit them into.
But they also-
No,
this schedule.
Redfern is not a major, it's a major road, but it's not one that falls under TIP, is it? Redfern?
I don't think so.
Williams is, right?
Williams is.
Williams, but Redfern, I know it's a major cut through, but it's not.
I don't know if it's on the system, the national, not the high national highway system, whatever they call the
Yeah.
federal aid road, federal aid roadways.
Right.
I mean, the other part is, and it's not just rolling out the miller and then the paver. There's usually structures that need to be raised, lowered, grading for drainage and things like that. So that's why doing half of a major road, you have to do it end to end to make sure that it all works together.
Well, but Stephen, I think a perfect example is, and I'm trying to remember the road where, and it might have been Merriweather, where after we paved it, the gas company dug it up, and they did I'm going to say 100-yard section,
Curb to curb.
curb to curb. Looked pretty darn good. 2 years later, that they did that.
They did it in front of Williams in front of 2 houses down in front of the fire station.
Right, so my only point is that, yeah, if you don't have to raise structures or something like that, that could be an effective way of making our money go further, than, especially if we're doing it in-house as opposed to doing it. So ultimately, Mario, my question is, how much paving do you get for, $10,000 bidding it out versus how much do you get for $10,000 putting it into our own paving folks?
Far more. Yeah, right. It's far more. And especially when you own equipment, which we're in the process of.
So, should we be taking some money and making sure we, if you have the labor and the expertise and that kind of stuff, but that's a decision you need to make, but I think you ought to ask for the money if you need it, Marie.
Well, don't you have money in the program because you've bought the equipment to be able to do some of that work this year?
Yep.
Yeah.
We didn't program extra money. We're using like the savings that were not spent on other projects.
So
Yeah.
it's-
So as projects have savings, and you also have the 10,000 up there, capital reserve, you can just
Yep.
start using those
Well, no,
things.
capital reserve isn't for that.
You can't
Capital
use
reserve-
that?
No, the capital
No,
reserve
that's-
is for projects that come in $500 or $1,000
Right.
over their estimate. And so we don't have to go back to town meeting for $500 to run a $30,000 project, kind of thing.
I had one question back on capital that I forgot to ask. Was the refurbished Marine One, was that approved?
That I don't know.
Yes, it's on the list.
Yeah.
Yes,
It
it's
did,
on the
okay, it
list.
was
Oh,
on
yeah,
this
it's
list.
pretty
being
high,
approved.
it's pretty high up.
Yeah, I had one question. What is the replacement cost on Marine One?
Oh, geez, it's 6 figures or something like that.
It's a lot of money.
How big is it?
It's a 30-foot boat.
30-foot boat.
I'm not quite sure.
No, it's a good size, but he just said this the other day. I think it's like
In front of the finance
100,000 or something
Yeah,
like
it
that.
was up there.
Yeah.
But they're very satisfied with the makeup of that, and they preferred actually a refurbishment as opposed to going out and buying something new.
It's the,
No, I was just generally asking, because 32, isn't that the one that's like a 17-footer?
I don't know how big it is, but it's like a military-grade hull.
Yeah.
Even though it's 20 years old, the hull is in good shape, and you
Okay.
can be in like a foot of water, and
Yeah.
so they like the bones of it, but it needs new wiring, new motor, new other stuff.
Is part of that a new motor, the 32?
Yeah.
Yeah, basically it's replacing the inside.
Have you
Those are
ever,
really expensive.
I'll ask just an open question, have you ever looked at surplus?
Yeah, we do that a lot.
Are you able to tie in a GSA, the big
Yeah.
government?
We got a
one?
couple of that electric vehicle that we had tooling around with our grounds division was a surplus vehicle.
Yeah.
They got, and I think this is very clever, they got a surplus, they call them tugs, that you see them at airports where they
Right.
pull luggage carts and things like that. We got one of those to move trailers and things like that around the DPW yard.
We had a hot box a couple of years back.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
Well, if you've ever been to one of their major yards, they literally have graders stacked 6 and 10 high. They pull them down, grease them up, oil them, run them 50 hours, and put them right back on the
Yeah.
racks. And then every 10 years, they get rid of them.
Right.
And they've never really ever been used. And it's wow.
Yep.
But I was wondering, we're so far removed from the major depots, I was wondering if we were able to, what, are we pulling in on state then? Is that what we're
Yeah,
doing?
there's a website that has the things, and sometimes it's be careful what you wish for.
Yeah. Yeah, you can get in trouble. Yeah, guy wants a bulldozer, and then he goes to look for a job to do with something with the bulldozer. Yeah.
Can I ask two other questions? The first one's on the Greenwood Center roof gutters. What does that entail? And I thought Greenwood Center roof was relatively new, Paul. We were still paying that off. So what is
It is.
So
I
what's
think-
that project?
The roof was replaced with a rubber membrane, and before it was asphalt shingles. And so the snow just slides off. There's no barriers, no snow guards. And so as that comes off, there's a couple different issues. One is that all that weight is hazardous and a safety issue. And the second piece is it's pulling off all the gutters. And so as those gutters fall and whatever's left melts, it's rotting the fascia. So the question, or the request is to put gutters on, snow guards, and fix the fascia.
Okay, so it's more, we're not putting a new roof on.
No, it's not roof at all.
There's
Snow
nothing
guards, I think.
outstanding. There's
Okay.
nothing outstanding in debt for Greenwood.
No, that's fine, but just the way it's written as Greenwood Center roof and gutters, and it's really
Yep.
Greenwood Center, if you will, fascias. Okay, that answers that question. Thank you. The other one is DPW sidewalk plow. I seem to recall we just bought one a few years ago. Maybe it was a few more years ago than I think, but.
This, I think, geez, I'd have to look it up. I think this is over 15 years old. It's stated in the documents.
Okay. All right.
We bought a grounds piece of equipment,
We definitely bought a tool cat, yeah.
but that's a different application. This is an actual, it's made for that type of work, has a snowblower attachment that fits on the front, and obviously we use it all over town.
Yeah, I'm just going back to the days when the
Didn't
town
you-
used to plow all
didn't you say
the
it also has
sidewalks in town.
use in the summer?
That's before most people's
Yes,
day here.
there's attachments you can use for summer. You can add the new version of the piece of equipment. Probably can mow, it can have, you put a sweeper attachment on it, so it's not just a winter piece of equipment.
All right, thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
The other one was 100,000 too, Mark.
Oh, yeah.
I think Mike bought it. It was $100,000.
Yeah, it was a lot of money.
Yeah, it was a lot of money.
This is, $55,000 isn't a Toro snow blower. I mean, it's a tractor.
Yeah,
It's a
absolutely.
big tour. But is that a cab unit?
Yes, that's Calon.
Yeah. Heat, air conditioning.
Right.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions of Dr. Metz or Mr. Haas?
You looking for a motion?
No? Because we're going to do this as part of the overall budget, I think. I mean, this is fine, thank you, but Marie, I just don't want to get into a point where we make a motion and have to make changes. We'll accept this
Okay.
as, because it's on the warrant. When we review the warrant on
Okay.
Thursday, we'll take this at that point. Dr. Metz, thank you very much. Thank the
Thanks for
Capital
having me.
Planning Committee
Good job.
for all your work. I appreciate it. We appreciate that. Okay. The last thing on our agenda was to sign the town meeting warrant, and that was just a really, I don't know that we're really going to go over that, because that's what's on that's our agenda for
We
for
need to
Thursday.
go over it, don't we?
Yeah.
We need to go over it, a lot of it, yes.
Yeah, but we
So-
didn't are we going to start any, but we're going to push it all to Thursday?
I'd like to start some tonight, but
The green one's already approved.
what?
Some of it's already approved.
Yeah, some of it's already approved.
Some of it's already approved. Yeah, I think you highlighted in yellow the
Right,
ones that's.
they're
Green
highlighted.
ones?
Sorry?
Yeah, green are approved.
Green are approved, yes.
Budget.
Whatever the highlight is on the article
Yeah.
number.
Yeah, so,
Waiting for numbers on other stuff.
Could I have a talk about one of the articles we approved? Let's see, where is the streetlights?
Article 14?
Article 14, okay, so, thinking a little out of the box, since Stephen said there might be, we don't know if it's going to come in at 870, might come in at 860, might come in at 865. Can we say we'll authorize the borrowing of 870 for purpose of purchasing streetlights and replacement of, and related bonding costs or any of the action, and possible conservation projects? So some of that can be rolled over to pay for some of those energy conservation projects and other energy conservation projects.
I personally would have recommended a separate article for that.
yeah, I.
Yeah, but that's why I was thinking, then we can, instead of that money rolling into free cash, then we have to wait until the fall, then it could smoothly be done in one construction season. Because it's not going to probably come in at 870. We always overblow the number
Well,
to leave some.
Marie, my understanding is that number is going to be changed from 870. So at the town meeting floor, we're going to make a motion for what the number really is. So we're not going to pad the number at town meeting floor.
But still will be, because we'll never know exactly what those LED costs are going to be in purchasing.
No, these are estimates from MAPC,
Yeah.
based upon the number of streetlights we have.
Right, but.
Well,
but-
think about it. No decision tonight. Think about, that's one of the things. The other thing was a warrant article that I mentioned before on any rents coming from the current COA would be going towards the revolving fund for the COA.
No, this is.
I don't think that's going to be ready for this, in terms of figuring all that out. We said by
No,
the-
it won't be ready, but if we need an actual warrant article in there,
I
it
think
would
we can
just
do
be.
that. When you said that, I thought that'd be a perfect thing for the fall, because we'll know what we need to know by then.
You don't think we could just place it
I
ahead
don't
of
like
time to
ramming
have
stuff
it
through
ready?
without, it was brought up middle of last week.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like we would be really scrambling and displacing a lot of other higher priorities, quite honestly, to figure that out, when I think
Oh, I
by the
didn't
end
know
of
if we had to figure out the amount or anything.
it takes more work than I think you're giving it credit for, but I do think that's a perfect thing. Like I said, I think looking ahead to, by the end of the fiscal year, figure it out, go through the process, and then put it on the fall, and then do an article in the fall to see if we really want to do a special revenue account, or or maybe we can just do it administratively for the revolving fund. I don't know. We may not even need a town meeting.
Oh, okay,
vote.
I thought we absolutely needed
But
one.
we haven't had the chance to research it. It
Okay.
just came up, and I don't know that we'll have the time to do it between now and the warrant has to go out.
And then the other thing is, do we have an Airbnb bylaw in here? Because we talked about
Yeah.
it.
37.
Which one is that?
37, I think.
Now, we haven't done those. We can maybe go through those pretty quick.
Right. Yeah, because those weren't available at the time.
Yeah.
If you want to, we can
Short-term
start
rentals.
with, why don't we start with, I was going to say 34, but
33?
33, yeah. Start with 33, which is a proposal, it's to accept the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 51, Section 16A, creates a four-member board of election commissioners. We talked about that. So
Okay.
that's the one that would,
I know Marie's ready to make a motion on that.
Yeah, I'm ready to go for that. So moved.
Make it a non-partial motion, will you, please.
I'll second it.
Well, it's for a Democrat to
Okay,
get
so
in there.
Marie's moved
How
that we
bipartisan
accept
could it
Article
be?
33, and Tom seconded it. Is there any other discussion on Article 33 now that we see it in writing?
Yeah.
No, all those in favor? Votes 5-0. So that Article 33 is going to go into the warrant. Article 34 is to accept Park Drive, and I guess, Stephen, you owe us just a minute of, after all this time, Park Drive's not a legal town?
So Resident
Legal
Park
road?
Drive came, and actually, if you look at the street signs, it says private way, and this is one of those head scratchers. I mean, I just can't figure why back in the 30s, and I haven't done the research to figure out how long ago Springfield accepted it, but Park Drive kind of snakes through and it crosses the municipal boundary.
Right, so it goes back and forth into Long Meadow.
Public, private, public, private, public, private, public, private. So it's public way in Springfield, private in Long Meadow. I think it's probably just an oversight years ago. And so when a resident brought it to my attention, I said, this should be easy for us. We did the same, I mean, the people of Dunn Road may say, well, how about us? But we did go, or Glen Meadow Villas, the engineer did go out, did review the street, it does conform with our standards. The road is in relatively good condition, doesn't see like an immediate, maintenance burden on the town.
Haven't we been plowing it anyway?
Yeah. The only thing I'll say is, this is one where we know we need to do it. The motion may end up being a little bit different because there may need to be additional language to actually accept the street. This is one we haven't gotten language on, and if you want to hold off on approving it, we can, but the language in the motion may be slightly different is all I'm saying.
So I accept the motion to accept Article 34, to accept Park Drive, understanding that the language may change to make it compatible with Mass General Law.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Motion's made by Marie and seconded by Tom for Article 34 to accept Park Drive. Any comments? All those in favor? Vote is 5-0. Okay, the next one is Article 36. We're actually going to rename that, I assume, Richard.
We will, yeah.
For renumber.
Right, but for our purposes, it's on the draft we have, it's Article 37. And,
36.
Excuse me. Article 36, which is the cleanup of the, for lack of a better word, the cleanup of the charter.
Okay.
So it has a whole bunch of things there that, unfortunately, is a lot of paperwork, but it's crossing out the things that we want to cross out, but yes, that covered it, so.
This was all cribbed right from the Charter Review Committee's report.
So moved.
Yeah, second.
Okay, motion's made by Marie, seconded by Richard. Any
Or
comments?
Bill, or whoever.
Whoever
All
the
those in
person is.
favor? It's 5-0. Passes to be accepted. Next one's Article.
Hey, Mark?
Yeah?
Before we go there, I mean, we skipped over 35.
Because 35 we're deferring.
Right, I don't know if we talked about that here. You and I talked about it. It doesn't matter. We can,
Yeah.
okay, that's fine.
All right, so 37?
Yeah, so 37 is the
Airbnb.
so-called, it allows the town to accept the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 64G, Section 3A, which is to allow us to set excise tax on short-term rentals at 6%.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so it's Marie made the motion and Bill seconded. This is essentially a Airbnb local options tax.
We can go up to 6%, but the recommendation is to go to 6%.
Where's the money to be deposited then?
General fund.
Local receipts.
Okay.
And how do we enforce this? Is it
They have to register.
through the Airbnb? Yeah.
And actually, the state, I think, collects.
It's kind of like the local options meals tax.
The
state
6%,
collects.
yeah.
State collects the tax, or they
Closing in on
pay
the
the
town.
state directly, and the
You
state
can-
sends the stuff.
There's also a local impact, there's also an community impact fee of 3% that we can assess. That's not a part of this. I don't think we have any professionally managed Airbnbs. And how you enforce it is, you go on Airbnb or VRBO and you type in Long Meadow and you figure out who's doing this, and then you make sure you have a registration form from them. Same thing we did with rentals. There aren't a lot, but I will tell you from some calls we've gotten from residents, especially if it's a street that's more densely built, and say it's, the week of the Big E, or the month of the Big E, and it's changing over. I mean, it can be somewhat disruptive to a neighborhood, and without having any idea who's in there, what are they doing, and, it's an important tool for us to kind of keep a handle on it, and I don't think we're going to get rich off of it, but it's a potential revenue source.
It's more to regulate Airbnbs than it is to
Yeah.
collect money, I think.
Yeah. Correct. It's like the money that we have for the $1,100, like, the state imposed that on Uber and Lyft, and because of trips generated, they sent us this thing saying, fill out a report, and we're sending you $1,100, like,
Don't they have to vote on it here?
yeah, they think they already voted on that one.
All right, so all those in favor of placing Article 37 on the warrant, vote is 5-0, thank you. Okay, Article 38 is to see if the town will vote to amend zoning bylaws. This is for quote-unquote "commercial vehicles," right?
Overnight parking of
Overnight
commercial
parking of
vehicles in the
commercial
driveway.
vehicles. And it says, replacing with the following, it says, a totally enclosed private garage must be used for overnight vehicular storage of vehicles registered as commercial or bus, or as defined by the Code Massachusetts regulations, except those that are registered in the town of Long Meadow. What does that mean, those that accept it? So I don't,
So in other words, if it's registered in Long Meadow, they don't have to garage it. If it's registered in another town, they do have to garage it. And that's a way of getting people to register?
So this is a variation of the one with the, because it was, before it was if they had logos on the trucks, and that didn't pass, right?
No, what we're trying to do is the current bylaw
Yeah.
says, it says commercial vehicles generically.
Yeah.
And then it says, or vehicles that are, including vans and pickups, or vehicles that are lettered for that purpose. It's somewhat antiquated. It doesn't really reflect how vehicles get lettered now. Like a sedan can be lettered.
Right.
And so we went around and around on this, and to clarify what is allowed and what isn't, we went back to the definition of commercial in terms of registration at the motor. So the Code of Massachusetts regulations really refers to the register, or I think it's Mass DOT now, but
Right.
a commercial plate or a bus plate. And so you have to use an enclosed private garage unless it's registered in Long Meadow, is under 7,000 pounds, has 6 wheels or fewer, and
Two axles.
and two axles.
No more than 2 axles.
No more than 2 axles, right. So it's really intended for folks who may have a vehicle for work. They live in Long Meadow, they live in their home, and they may have a vehicle for work, like I know there's somebody, like a Brahmin Pest Control, or somebody who works for the cable company or something like that, and they need to store the vehicle in the driveway. What we don't want is large, triaxle dump trucks and things like that stored overnight in the driveway, but this was kind of and it is better worded than the one last year that we withdrew.
So van, someone who had a van with their tools in the back would be fine, as long as they're registered in Long Meadow. Yeah.
So part of what we're saying is that these vehicles will be allowed if they don't exceed the gross vehicle to 7,000 or have 2 axles. But I don't know if it's clear enough. It'll be used for overnight vehicle storage. Should we say allowed for overnight vehicle storage?
The way and this is part of the problem with this, is the way the existing bylaw is inserted into the language about garaging. It's kind of tacked on there, and so adjusting it in that existing bylaw is awkward. It'd be better to pull it out and create its own separate section, but we're dealing with this is where it's at in the code now.
Because I wonder if we need to say the town of Long Meadow does not accept vehicles that exceed a gross weight of 7,000 or have more than 2 axles.
No, you can't say that.
You can't say that.
Yeah. It really is.
Because then what-
It really is in a garage or out of a garage, and what we're trying to do is make it so unless it is, like, even if it's commercially registered, if it is a vehicle that is the same size as other vehicles that people drive for residential purposes, for passenger purposes, that they're not negatively impacted.
Okay, so anything that's larger than this is covered in a separate bylaw.
If it's larger than those dimensions, it has to be in an enclosed garage.
That isn't what,
Yeah, it's an exemption. So you have to have your commercial or bus vehicle in a private garage overnight, unless it's registered in Long Meadow, is under 7,000 pounds, 2 axles, 6 wheels or fewer.
okay, I got it now. I'm sorry, thank you.
I'm just comment, I oppose this article only because I don't think we should be allowing commercial vehicles in driveways that aren't garaged. So I personally think that if it's registered as a commercial vehicle, it's a commercial vehicle. And if you're running a business out of your house because that's where you do it, or you're the Comcast cable guy and you're bringing your truck home at night because that's the vehicle you use, put it in a garage. I'm going to vote against this. I think commercial registered vehicles, which is what it says, registered and, I said my piece, registered and put in.
No, I agree. I would imagine it'll be defeated anyway.
I think we got to get it up and discuss it again, because I think people will look at it as a compromise.
Well, there's no compromise.
Yeah, because you register it,
Oh, big
and it's
deal.
smaller.
What's the difference on registering it? It's still a lettered vehicle sitting in a driveway with,
With
Doesn't say-
it's commercial plates.
Doesn't
Commercial?
say anything about lettering now.
No.
well, yeah, that's
Yeah.
it, but in the absence of, you can have.
Yes.
It says
exactly.
registered as commercial or bus, so if for whatever reason I want this vehicle to be charged to my business, I've registered it as a commercial vehicle, for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, the
It's
reason why I
different
want to get
from
away from the
having
lettering,
Pardon?
the reason why I want to get away from the lettering
Yeah.
aspect is because there are First Amendment considerations. People can get their vehicles lettered for whatever they want.
Yeah, and then they can put them in their garage.
And say vote for me.
But under
Angela.
the current bylaw, the current bylaw wouldn't require you to do that
Yeah.
if you had a passenger plate.
Well, this will be improvement over what we have now.
It is clearer than what we have now.
Now we can, anyone can
But-
put
but
people are putting their plows in their driveways.
But what we have now, Marie, isn't legally authorized by our current bylaw. We're just not enforcing the bylaw. This, the question will come up, and I know it will, is if this passes, will people be enforcing this bylaw because we're not enforcing the current bylaw? Because right now, people have commercial vehicles that violate even this in their driveway. That we're not, we only enforce it by complaint, or we only investigate it by complaint. We certainly don't go after people with vehicles that meet this now, that would meet this new bylaw, that don't meet our current bylaw. So the issue is a bylaw enforcement for me. It's not so much of, do we get a new bylaw? I've already indicated I'm voting against it, but,
Well, I'll move it to put it on the warrant.
okay. Is there a second to put it on the
Second.
warrant? All right.
Bill, second. Just more discussion. I think it just shows the diversity of our community in some ways, that we should have a diverse community, that it's kind of nice to have a plumber or electrician who lives in town, or a carpenter who lives in town, work on your house. And I think that if I, as a homeowner, didn't like the fact that my neighbors had trucks, that met this requirement, then I would just move to another part of town.
Oh, Tom, come on.
No, seriously. I mean, if it's that big of a deal. I mean, I just,
The issue is, it doesn't say you
People
can't have a
move around in this
plumber.
town all the
You can't
time.
have a plumber live in your neighborhood. All it says, and I believe there are probably people in town who've done this, is because, and I say that because there's a house literally across the high school, put on a third garage to park his vehicle inside. That's all it says. It doesn't say you can't live there. It doesn't say you can't have that kind of a truck. It just says you have to garage it inside, Tom. That's the only difference. So it's not it allows for more diversity. It just allows for less people to leave their commercial vehicles outside. That's all it does.
Diversity's not having a plumber, electricians live in town.
But I know there are people who
can't-
invested big money. He invested a whole lot of money putting on that third garage.
they may not be able to,
Yeah.
there are some people who can't afford.
Right, yeah, I mean, I think the issue
afford
is,
to live
I think the issue is, he had the opportunity to do that because of the way his house sat on his lot. We have plenty of shared driveways, and, there are houses that are advertised with two-car garages that you couldn't put a car in, or one-car garage because they were built in the 1930s or 40s, and, I mean, a fair amount of our community is built out, was built in a time where families had maybe one car. And that's just not the reality now. And again, it is more about clarifying enforcement to make enforcement easier than it is to all of a sudden have it be, trucks galore. And to be honest with you, one of the people who's complained most vociferously about this issue said, change the bylaw.
How would you?
And so that's what we're trying to do.
I couldn't follow your statement, though. You're saying this is going to make it easier for enforcement. We have something right now that we don't enforce unless it's complained
Right.
about.
Because it ties the exemption or the requirement, depending on how you look at it, to the registration of the vehicle.
But who's going to check on that anyway?
That you can just look at the tag.
Yeah, I know, but it's still going to be a complaint. They're going to file, and somebody's going to have to check it out.
But that's how. But at least there's a clear defining line of what's the violation. It's tied to the registration, which it's not right now. The
Yeah.
current bylaw is not tied to the registration of the vehicle, the type of plate.
Right. No, I understand that. That's a fine line you're bringing in.
And so that's what we're doing, is we're tying it specifically to the
So
registration
what
of the vehicle.
what about a vehicle that you bring home from your company?
If it fulfills these requirements,
It can't
then,
be registered in our town, can it?
well, I mean, that's the thing.
Okay, well, then that question needs to be answered.
No, if
Can
it's
it
not
be?
registered in the town, then it doesn't, then you can't have it on your
Can it
driveway.
be registered in this town?
Right. Can it be registered in
Yeah.
town? Sure.
And how's that going to be verified?
Yeah, how can it be registered?
When they run the plate.
The person driving the vehicle doesn't own the vehicle.
Yeah.
So how could it be registered in our town?
I mean, they have to figure that out with the company that they work for.
But I'm just asking, though, you can't, you have to own a vehicle to register a vehicle.
I guess.
So,
Well, there's, yeah, but, the employer who owns the vehicle.
right, they don't live in town.
They
Right.
would, but they would have to.
This doesn't
garage
broadly
it. They'd have to
expand.
garage it somewhere.
Yeah.
I
And so they
understand,
make a
Tom, but what we're
decision.
saying,
It's still
what
be
we're saying.
registered in your town.
No, it's not. The
I have a
vehicle-
lease vehicle for my company, it's registered to me, it's registered in here, Long Meadow.
That who belongs to who?
Belongs to the leasing company.
Okay, but that's a leasing thing. We're talking about an owner, a commercial owner that's got
Right, we're not
that's
gonna,
got Sam's Tattoo Parlor, for instance.
Right.
He's got 700 vehicles scattered across the United States.
so, like I said, I know you could take, Weedman or Brahmin or like I said, Xfinity, they may not be able to get their van registered in Long Meadow, so they can't keep it in the driveway overnight. Even under this change, they won't be able to do that. It's really more designed for people who
Run the
live in,
business out of their
work.
home.
Well, not say run a business out of their home, but run a business that requires them to have a certain type of vehicle that they use, and they may not have the space to store it. But it's not, that's the intent, and it's not, like I said, not necessarily running a business out of they probably run their business out of their vehicle. But it's just to provide some clarity and some relief, although really not that much, to folks who fit that category. I mean, how vehicles are used for business is different than it was when this bylaw was conceived. How people, like I said, the biggest thing is people can take their passenger sedan, put graphics all over it, and that's how I was driving behind a sedan. I didn't know if the plate was commercial or not, but it was completely lettered sedan. Like I said, this is all just in an attempt to get clarity. And the thing about enforcement is it's an overnight bylaw. The violation occurs overnight, and we don't have somebody that enforces this right now overnight. And that's something that I think if this passes and the bylaw is clearer, it'll be easier to enforce, and I think then it will be clearer for the police department to enforce.
You said that twice. I still don't understand. We've got an ordinance now that we don't enforce. I just don't understand how this is all of a sudden going to change the game.
It's not that we don't enforce it because it's difficult to enforce, because there's some interpretation of what is a commercial vehicle, and it's tied to lettering versus tied to the registration.
Okay.
Now, could you refresh me? This was on the warrant last year?
Different. It was written
It
differently
was
last
written
year.
differently, and the people in town voted down.
No, we
They didn't like it.
withdrew
Probably
it.
not.
Oh, we withdrew it
Let the
before that?
discussion
Yeah.
continue.
All right. So this
Okay.
is really the first time it's going to come up for discussion.
First time for discussion, correct.
First time in this form.
Yeah.
So
So we keep trying.
Or not. I mean, some people keep trying, and others say, enforce the bylaws we have. Anyway, is there any more discussion?
You keep
Well,
saying
let's wait,
that.
Stephen, let's just go through. We got several more to go.
all right, so we'll call.
Yeah, don't lose your
I'll
cool
call for a
yet.
vote. All those in favor of putting Article 38 on the warrant? And all those opposed? So the vote is 3-2, and Mr. Foster and Mr. Gold voted against it.
Can you explain 39? I don't quite understand. The Historic District Commission wants, what do they want to do? It's not expanding it, right?
No.
Oh, yeah. I think it's a clarification from Historic District versus Historic Commission. Historic District Commission from the Historical Commission.
Oh, I'm confused.
This
Okay.
was submitted by the Historic District Commission.
Okay. right, so moved.
Second.
Okay. Is there any others, since none of us seem to really understand what it's doing?
Well, I get them too confused, and I know we discuss it, we say the wrong names all the
It's
time.
confusing.
Well, if you look at, the objective of the revision is to separate out the Historic District Commission from the Historical Commission and eliminate any duplicate or confusing contradictory language.
Okay.
That's what it says.
All right, sounds good to
Okay.
me.
So if they're happy with it, we'll let this go. All those in favor? Vote is 5-0. Okay. Article 40 is a,
This has been a big problem for a while, I understand, between Board of Health and the fire chief. So I move to accept 40.
Second.
this is an open burning
Yeah.
constraint?
Yeah.
Correct.
Stephen, who generated this?
Fire chief,
Yeah.
Okay.
fire department.
Okay. And I guess the question that's going to come up at town meeting is, what's the issue that needs this? And I can answer it then, because it doesn't do anything for me.
Oh,
to
yeah.
Answer that question now.
Hey, I
It's a
mean-
big problem with fires getting out of control and
Air quality, things
air
like that.
quality. I've had people complain to me about
Okay.
the smoke blowing into their houses.
Then why would you allow open burning of brush trees resulting from agricultural land clearing operations?
Because they may be allowed by state statute.
Now, they do it down at the
Raspberry stalks.
conservation area.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that creates all the stuff that you just said was bad.
Yeah, but the problem is when you started to do it next door to me.
Yeah, well, no, actually,
Yeah.
state of Florida has it up where you have to accelerate burn. They have big blowers that blows and there's no smoke.
Oh, see, they know how to do it.
Yeah, they burn every year, but they do it quickly.
So the problem's the
So
amateurs.
it basically bans open burning except for the 7
Ceremonial fires will be very popular.
I can park my commercial vehicle, but I can't burn a
Ceremonial fires, of
bush.
course.
Right.
And cooking.
You got it, Steve.
You got it.
You got it.
That's it.
Can't
Oh,
burn
This is
oh,
Long Meadow.
Not being able to burn leaves is un-American.
I've been waiting all year to do that.
Does this cover, like chimeneas and that kind of thing? You can still have a fire.
You could get it permitted by the fire department.
If you have a permit?
Yeah, they just
That's
come-
not an open burn, is it?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
That's
Oh,
considered
it's
open
considered
burn.
open burning?
Okay.
Yeah, I think they just come and look at it and see setbacks and things like that.
All right. I'm going to ask for a vote on placing Article 40 on the warrant. All those in favor? Any opposed? No, it passes 5-0. Article 41 is to amend Chapter 400 Public Order, which is the
Air brakes.
Jake break.
Yeah.
air brakes.
So moved. They're horrible on Converse Street.
I was just going to say, I didn't understand the need for this, but obviously they're
Jake,
horrible on,
They're bad.
Yeah.
that's fine. I'm not around long
Is there a
enough to hear
second
them.
for discussion?
Second.
Okay.
So I got a complaint from a resident on Converse Street who was complaining about jake braking, and most towns have jake brake prohibitions. So I forwarded it to the chief and said, you know, what do we have on the books? And he said, we don't have a jake brake prohibition on the books. And I said, this is a layup, like, this, it's insane that you know, you can't park a lettered vehicle in your driveway overnight, but you can fire a jake brake at 2 o'clock in the morning. So I was blown away that we did not have a jake brake prohibition in this community, especially with all of the truck traffic not generated in Long Meadow. So I thought, this should be an easy lift.
Now, does this affect any of our, like, fire trucks or any of our large
No.
vehicles?
No, municipal vehicles are exempt.
They don't have jake brakes on many of them either. I don't
No,
know.
we don't have very many.
What
No.
these brakes do. I don't know what
They
these
make a
brakes do.
horrible
compression brake.
screeching noise.
No, it's a compression brake.
Okay. The question is, how are we going to enforce it unless the cop's behind it? Well, no, officers got to be
Trust me,
near enough to live.
people are going to come out and take pictures.
Well, that's fine, but the
It's
truck's
same
going to be
truck.
in these long
They
Meadow by then.
may catch them, I mean, usually the signage.
That's
the-
fine.
The truckers get the signage.
I'm not
Yeah,
going to...
they have an option whether they use it or not.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. I was just curious. All those in favor of placing Article 41, vote is 5-0. I have a question about Article 42, which is a citizen's petition. I thought we were going to
Yes, exactly.
place within the Select Board's section of this warrant an article adopting the bylaw that places restrictions on ancillary energy
There's a long
buildings.
bylaw. Yeah, I understood the select board was going to adopt it. We didn't want it to be run by a citizen.
right? And I'd like to
And I
see
found
it-
out today, in talking to the attorney, that that was a good idea, to not, have a citizen, determine
Right.
it.
Right, so the
So-
bylaw has been adopted by a whole lot of towns. I pulled it right out of this,
In Massachusetts?
in Massachusetts, yeah. I pulled it right out of other Massachusetts
In
towns.
fact, I think that's where she got it.
From me.
From you. Okay, see, there we go. So you were the cause of the problem.
No, well, because it was
So-
how can we control this stuff? And I
Yeah.
said, you gotta use a bylaw that puts constraints on these buildings, and
Yeah, I mean, I want to be careful here, because we generally don't do this with citizens petitions.
we're not touching the citizen petition.
All I'm saying
I
is,
think we ought to have a bylaw that gives us rights around, energy.
Citing
outside-
and pollutants, yeah.
Yeah, it's,
so I think what'll end up happening is, depending on the outcome of this at town meeting, it will go to the Attorney General.
No, we want in other words, she will say no action if we have our own 42 or
That's-
43.
I think
Right.
we won't, for reasons that I'm hoping,
I want.
But we talked
they'll
about that
articulate.
a month ago.
I know.
Why won't
Why
we,
won't
Stephen?
we?
So, in my discussion with her today, she views it differently, that there are aspects of the bylaw of this bylaw that may not pass muster.
Okay.
Okay? And then, so, I thought the same as Mark, going into this, that it was kind of a boilerplate, and so it would be a relatively simple thing for us to kind of adopt it for ourselves. According to the information I received today, it's not. And to write our own bylaw, it would take a lot more decision-making about what types of things we want to protect and what kind of levels we want to get to. So her guidance, which she will reduce to writing, is essentially see what the Attorney General says about this one. If the Attorney General upholds all of this, more power to us, literally.
So is there nothing that's not covered by this?
So,
Or she's just feeling this overreaches, is that it?
There are specific aspects of it that she feels
But-
may not survive.
but this doesn't even have the bylaw. It just says they shall adopt the bylaw. I mean, if you
But the
read,
bylaw was a part of the petition.
was
She
it?
has a huge bylaw.
Yeah,
It's
the
like two
bylaw
or
is
three
part of the
pages.
And I'm looking at it now.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and it defines what it says, the purpose of the bylaw is to provide that the town's planning and zoning laws are used to ensure that
No,
there is
that's not
adequate
it.
protection of its citizens and environment from noise, pollutants, emissions, discharges, leaks, and other risks and hazards that are associated with facilities of natural gas utilities. Facilities of natural gas utilities, herein referred to as facilities, are defined herein.
No, she wrote, that's not what she wrote.
No, there's like
That's
a
the bylaw
multi-page
she had
bylaw.
attached to it.
That's it?
No, the petition had a bylaw attached to it.
Yes, this is not the bylaw. There's a whole bylaw.
And
That's not
I
it.
don't think we're accepting a bylaw.
I don't know why it's not on there.
See if the
So we're
town
gonna
will
have to
vote
put-
What do you mean?
adopt
I don't
bylaws.
understand what you're saying.
There is in other words, this is just, we'll adopt a bylaw.
Right, I understand
But her
that.
citizen's petition had an actual bylaw.
And
attached
that's
to
what
it.
I'm reading, the actual bylaw that was attached to her citizen's petition, I thought.
No, you're not.
We'll go back and check that. But I know she has a multi-page, like a
Multi-page
comprehensive
bylaw.
bylaw.
And so how is that getting into the warrant? That's got to be reproduced in the warrant.
Right.
If we're gonna back off on this, we gotta
No,
look
it's
at
a
this.
citizen's petition. It's,
I know, but we had all, when she first came in here, we agreed as a board that the board should be taking this over, and it should, something like this, and Andrea was all in agreement with that, and the planning board understood that, I told the planning board, my understanding was we were going to move forward on this. So now you're saying you're just gonna back off and see where this goes. Now I'm gonna sit down and try to look at the bylaw and see if it's the right way to go, because I thought we were getting a professional to sit down and write the bylaw.
You see, Maria, I thought we had the bylaw. I thought that when you say this isn't the bylaw.
No.
What is the bylaw? Then If this isn't it, what is it?
I
It's a
can send
larger
it to you.
document.
It's a
And-
larger
and she
document.
has-
This is a very large document.
So whatever Andrea brought in
It's
with
a
the.
six-page
Okay.
bylaw document.
Oh, what you were reading was right
I
here.
was just reading the first page of it.
Okay.
But it's got sections on emissions,
Yeah.
on noise.
Okay, that's
it's got-
it. That's
I'm
it.
telling you,
So-
on lighting, on first responders, that's the bylaw.
So,
On setbacks.
she has, that's a document that she has reviewed. And, like I said, it's not the answer I want to be giving you either.
Yeah.
What's that?
It's not the answer. So what was the comment? It's
That-
not a legitimate bylaw?
Not legitimate, but there are aspects that may not be approved by the Attorney General.
So in
That's
other
her
words,
view.
it'll go down, if the whole bylaw will be shot down if certain sections are not accepted.
I don't know. And I think it's one of those things that has to go through the process and go to the Attorney General and see what the Attorney General says.
Well, that's not what she was saying. She was saying it's not going to make it.
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
She's saying she's not sure.
Here's
What
the downside,
recommended
though.
changes is she recommending then?
Again, it would depend on what we want to do, and that would also depend on what areas we think are survivable for the Attorney General.
Okay.
So this is targeting, facilities of natural gas utilities. Do we have any other bylaws that target specific entities like that?
No, but
Then why would we think this would fly?
because it's
not up to
utilities.
us.
The
But it
the area
doesn't- How
is.
can you target
The lines are basically what is regulated by somebody else and what do we have the authority to, and we've talked about this a lot, and about what is our local authority in terms of regulating these things. And our local authority is basically what's left over after all the other authorities that are already in statute at the federal and state level. Like I said, when Andrea told me she was going to do it, I said, well, we should just do it as a board and forget the citizens petition. That was my suggestion.
Yes, and we all agreed to that.
Right.
Not only that, but I told Andrea, you don't have to do it. Take it to the planning board and get them to kind of shepherd it through. And when she went
Right.
to the planning board, they said, we're not going to do it. So
Right.
she said, okay, my fallback is to do it as a citizen's petition.
Right.
Now,
Yeah.
at
So
the
that- but-
planning board, we
Right.
told the planning board we were going to do it as a
But then
board.
we retained an expert
Right.
to give us advice.
And when did she give us this advice?
She gave us this advice today.
Well, the timing is terrible. I
agree
want
with
to, I.
Well, no, then
I
we're going to
wanna-
keep it as a citizen's petition, but I'm going to sit down and start working on it as a legal document now. I mean, and that's frustrating.
Marie, I don't, there's-
I
if
couldn't
it- if we
agree
keep
with
it
you
as a
more. It's very
citizen's
frustrating.
petition, there's nothing you need to do to work on it as a legal
No,
document.
as a select board member, but as a member of the Energy
Well,
Committee, I'm going to
that's-
sit down and see what I could do to keep it surviving through the Attorney General.
But you don't know that.
I don't know that, but I'm going to take a look at it
And so
now.
why are we preemptively saying we're not going to put it on as a select board? Because we don't know that. If we feel strongly about it, at least I feel strongly about it. I was the one who's, when Andrea Chasen, but more importantly, other people said, what can we do to stop the natural gas, this thing from going in? I said, you can't stop it, but maybe you can regulate it. You can regulate the noise it puts out, you can regulate the emissions, you can do things legally. So we did some investigation and found out, here's what other towns in Massachusetts have done legally in Massachusetts to try to regulate these facilities. If we implement this bylaw before the thing is built, it's in effect. Once the thing's built, if we put this off 6 months and it gets built, that thing gets grandfathered and we can't regulate it. And so that's why I think it's important to do this now, take our chances with the Attorney General's office and see what happens with the thing. And if it gets shot down, it's not because we didn't try, it's because we gave it a shot, but it's not going to be no worse than just saying we're going to throw up our hands and say, we're not going to do it for 6 months.
No, but I think the citizens petition covers it.
But it does cover it, but I'm just saying, I feel strongly enough that I think the town ought to do it. We shouldn't be leaving this to a citizen's petition because I think the
But the citizens petition was already submitted, and so the town, meaning the legislative branch, is going to do it. And so in terms of in terms of getting a bylaw to vote, the town to vote on a bylaw and getting it to the Attorney General for review, that's going to happen. That's a good thing. But in terms of our plan to have it reviewed and maybe tweaked for something that works for the town, that was not as easy as we all thought it was going to be.
And the reason that we're not putting our name behind this is,
I mean, like I said, this is, well, the reason I put our name, what are you talking about? It's a citizen's petition.
no, I'm asking, the reason the select board is not going to sponsor this is,
This one?
yes.
Because it was submitted and had certified signatures. It's already on the warrant automatically. You can support it on the floor of town. The select board typically doesn't take a position on citizens petitions, but you can certainly speak to it on the floor of town meeting and vote for it.
Okay.
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is the idea of having the select board craft its own version turned out to be more complicated. Based on the legal guidance, you asked us to get. Now, I will, on the timing, there was a 2 or 3 week delay in getting started because I thought the finance committee was going to approve funds to pay this attorney that we were going to hire. So I didn't want to incur bills because I didn't have an appropriation. Finance committee said no, so we said, all right, we'll just do it and use our legal budget. But that was a part of this. And like I said, I've asked her, I knew that this was going to be the reaction because this was exactly my reaction to her today. It's disappointing and frustrating as hell. I'm with you on that completely. So I asked her to try and put something in writing so we could all understand. I quite frankly think this may meet the threshold of an executive session because there may be negotiations with Kinder Morgan and Columbia Gas. If we're going to have one, I mean, it's a little too late for the warrant, but if we're going to have one on April 1st, maybe we can invite the attorney here and she can kind of go through all the complexities of this with you so you can hear it firsthand. I think it's important because it's just so complex and so multi-layered and so variable that it's just very difficult to say, 1 + 1 = 2.
See, to me, it's not that complex, it's not that multi-layered and variable.
I know to you, but to the person we hired who is the expert, it is, and all I'm doing is reporting to you that is the case.
And Stephen, I just see it as a way to stop us from taking a stand on, or at least having a vote at the select board.
By me?
Yeah.
Oh, come on, Mark. That's outrageous. That's not even close to being true.
So why, I'll ask again the question Marie asked. Why can't we create Article 35, a replacement, and our Article 35 is to adopt this as a bylaw? Why can't we do that?
Because the person we have retained to help us do that doesn't believe that it's an effective approach at this moment.
Effective, define, effective for what?
Again,
I don't
I need you
understand the word
to hear it
effective.
from her.
Well, the problem is, then it's too late. I'm making a motion that we adopt this bylaw as Article 35, to place it on the bylaw, on the warrant as Article 35.
So the exact same one that's already in as a citizen's
Right,
petition.
and if we put it on there, it'll be considered as 35, and then it'll be...
What's the point of that?
Article 42 doesn't bring on a bylaw. It's according, it says that the town will vote to adopt bylaws, but there's no bylaw written in
But there
Article
is.
42.
There is one that came in with the
But
petition.
also the comment from Doherty, Wallace, and Pillsbury is this is a non-binding, sense of the meeting vote. It is a resolution by the legislature to do something in the future. So they're, according to Doherty, Wallace.
But I don't know if they saw the bylaw that she brought in. I think they just saw the warrant article language. There is that we have to straighten that out. There is a bylaw that was submitted.
But the town meeting's only going to see a
Fine.
warrant article too.
I just don't want to have to vote on the same thing twice. That makes no sense.
Well, we
But-
wouldn't.
Okay,
I mean, if
let's-
it passed as Article 35, it would be withdrawn,
let's-
they would withdraw it on the town.
Okay, let's wait until we get the answer on what does that citizen's petition do? Because we might need to put on our own warrant article before we close the warrant. So can we hold this off till Thursday?
You're better off doing what Mark is saying.
Which is what?
Just adopt it as your own.
And then let the chips fall where they are.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just going to say this. We went out, the board agreed we go out and seek legal advice. We have done that. we're now going to ignore the legal advice we've given. And I get it, you haven't heard it from them. I just, like I said, this is late breaking for me too.
Well, you have till Thursday. We can hold off this decision till Thursday. Can you get us a letter by Thursday? And can the chair be better informed on the reasons that needed to be discussed in executive session?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, having asked all the same questions that you want to ask and knowing what the answers are, you're better off doing what Mark wants to do and letting the chips fall where they may.
Can Mark talk to you?
Sure.
About
Yeah.
what you feel needs to be discussed in executive session?
We can.
And can we find out whether the citizen's petition is just a non-biting feel of the public, like Dotary Walls thinks?
We need to straighten out the bylaw being in the warrant, because it was a part of the petition, I believe. I mean, I know she handed it to me the day she came and got the signature certified. I think the intent was that was going to be the thing. I thought it was in, and I haven't really looked at it. So we'll straighten that part out, and then we can do that by Thursday.
And Mark
Fine.
can talk to the attorney, conference call, whatever you feel that needs to be for communication, what needed to be an executive session, so Mark can know all the moving pieces.
Yeah, but I do want to say, I feel like, Mark, if you suggest that I'm stonewalling this when this entire concept of bringing this through the select board, I suggested early on, is beyond the pale.
There's obviously something that he's, there's something else going on.
There's something going on.
That you can't talk about.
Well, I want to be careful what we say because, I think we're only at the beginning of a legal process, not at the end.
Yeah.
And I'm also trying to do what I can to protect the town's position.
I would talk offline.
Okay.
Or in
All right,
executive
so,
session.
but I have a copy of what was submitted by the petitioner.
Could you
okay?
send that to all of us?
I sure will, and
Okay.
it includes signatures, and then there's a proposed warrant article written there. So you're right, Stephen, that is was submitted.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it's not been reproduced in this draft warrant may be confusing to us. Maybe it was confusing to the attorneys, but
The attorney got the bylaw draft. She got the bylaw draft. Maybe Doherty Walls didn't.
But that's what I meant by,
Yeah.
that attorney is the attorney I was
Yeah.
referring to.
All right, so this will be held off till Thursday, when you have a
Fine.
chance to work
Fine,
behind.
I'll withdraw my comments.
Yeah.
So,
my
Again,
motion.
all right, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right, does anybody have any else? We're going to kind of call it here, it's 10 o'clock at night, we'll call it, and we'll move to, on Thursday, we're going to pick up the budget and then finish the warrant, which is essentially the capital plan and the budget part of the warrant. So once we go through the budget, we should be able to get through the rest of the warrant then at that point, okay? Does anybody have any other questions or comments?
Just,
Tom?
we didn't get to talk about the town manager's report, and there's this, they talk about the Bliss Park ADA grant project, which is, that we received from the Office of Disabilities in Massachusetts, a grant of $150,000 to install ADA improved structures in Bliss Park, which is great. They're going to pave the parking lot and install paved walking paths in the park. And that's the structures they're talking about, the walking structures? Yeah.
The what? I'm sorry.
The structures they're talking about are for the parking lot, or is there other structures in Bliss Park? You may not.
I mean, it'll basically pave the lot and put in ADA accessible features like tactile ramps and things like that.
Okay, great.
I haven't really seen the plans in great detail. It's been kind of, we got the grant, have a quick turnaround time on it, so
Yeah.
Andy Carr has been working directly with Barry Jarvis on that.
Yeah, because it looks like it'll start in mid-June, and that's great, because a lot of people have wondered about that parking area for a long time, so good work.
Thank you, Tom, I appreciate it.
Okay. Are there any other comments, questions? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. Motion's made. Mr. Foster, seconded by Mr. Lowe. All in favor of adjourning. We'll see you folks Thursday evening at 6:30. 6:30.
Oh, gosh, okay.
6:30.
Can't wait.
Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you.